whatever month this is, January, feels like July out there. January meeting of Development Control Committee. I have to do some housekeeping stuff before we start. If the fire alarm goes off, it won't be a test, so head out the way you came in. If you could have your mobile phones on silent. Yes. I'll try and speak up a bit. I did try and pull this a bit closer to me, but it only comes so far. The meeting is being recorded for live and or subsequent broadcast, unless we go into closed session for exempt items. By entering the council chamber and using the public seating, members of the public are effectively consenting to being filmed. For members, as usual, speak as close to the microphone as you can. Speaking loudly and clearly. Raise your hand if you want to speak. Wait for an invitation from the chair. And when referring to a specific report page slide, etc., mention the report page slide so that everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. Okay. First of all, apologies. I've got apologies from John Jones. I don't think we've got any other apologies. Declarations of interest. I'm not aware of any. Could you put your hand up if you've got any declarations of interest in any of the applications before tonight? Nope. Okay. Minutes of the 14th of November meeting. Is everybody okay with those, that they're an accurate record? Are you still having problems hearing, Lorraine? Are you okay? Can you hear me okay, Lorraine? No, not at all.
As well.
Oh, okay. Apart from...
Want some headphones?
Okay, we're just going to try and see if we can get some headphones working for Lorraine. Might help if I switch the microphone on. Sorry about that. You okay now? I hope you can hear me because I can't see you because I've got my short range glasses on. Oh, this thing's in the way, unfortunately. Okay. Right. Minutes, 14th of November 2023 meeting. Everybody stick your hands up if you're okay with that being a reasonably good record. Okay. Right, I think the only late papers that went out were on Sunnyside Nurseries application, a highways submission that should have gone out by email, and also I think there are paper copies around. Is everybody okay that they've had a chance to see that? Put your hand up if you need time to have a look at it. Yes. I really can't see people. I've got to get bifocals. Sorry, Helen. Do you need a minute to... Okay, fine. Okay. So, first item on the actual planning agenda, new TPO in Beech Tree, 118 Thrupp Lane, Thrupp. Case officer is Justin Hobbs, but Griff's going to introduce the report. Okay, Griff.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This decision has been referred to committee in line with the Council's constitution. Where an objection is made to a provisional tree preservation order, the decision to confirm any order must be ratified by committee. A temporary preservation order has been placed on a single mature beech tree in the grounds of 118 Thrupp Lane. An objection to the order was received from the landowner. Members will recall the tree from their site visit on the 16th of January. Location of the tree is shown on this plan marked as T1. It is in the rear garden of the property. However, given the topography, the tree is highly visible. The photo on the far left shows the tree from the garden with the valley beyond, and the photo in the middle looks up at the tree from the lane below. These images show the visibility of the tree from Thrupp Lane itself. The one on the, I'm going to have to look at the screen to make sure I get my left and right. The one on the left is from the side nearest the school, and the one on the right is on the other side towards Brewery Lane. Next slide. This is an online street view image from August 2023 to give you an idea of the tree when it was in leaf. And I'm just going to get your mouse to, and the trees just showing here. So again, you can see it with the valley beyond. The tree is between 150 and 200 years old. It has been subject to various works in the past, including possible pollarding and canopy reduction. There is also some bracing in the upper canopy. On inspection, there were no significant defects of the tree found. The species is a long-lived species and has the potential to live for another 100 years or more. The tree is a large specimen which is readily visible in the immediate locality. And furthermore, as the tree is on a slope, it is also highly visible across and within the valley. Officers use the tree evaluation method for preservation orders. Where a tree scores over 15, then a preservation order is merited. The assessment of this tree scored 18. Officers recognise that the tree has been subject to past works. The confirmation of a preservation order does not prevent future works, but requires the prior consent of the local planning authority. This enables the local planning authority to monitor proposed works to the tree and assist in the long-term management and retention of the tree. In making a decision, members may confirm the tree preservation order or choose not to confirm the order. If the order is confirmed, the tree would be subject to continued protection. If members choose not to confirm the order, the provisional order will expire and any protection on the tree will lapse. This is set out for you in more detail in the report before you. The officer recommendation is that the order is confirmed without modification. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Griff. Right, public speaking. We don't have a ward member speaking, so the first person up is Brimscombe Thrupp Parish Council, Councillor Tim Harris. I understand is going to speak in support of the TPO, and you'll have 4 minutes, and there should be a counter up on the screen, if you can keep an eye on that. If you get close to the 4 minutes, I'll give you a warning, because I will have to cut you off, okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Tim Harris, Brimscombe Thrupp Parish Council. The Parish Council supports in principle all tree protection orders in our parish. We think it's really important for all sorts of reasons, visual amenity and wildlife protection and biodiversity and all these good things. So we are speaking tonight to support this TPO. We do recognise that the landowner does have concerns, quite legitimate concerns about the health of the tree, and does also have a desire to make sure that the tree is properly maintained going forward, especially in view of the fact that if a catastrophe did occur, it could affect the houses below the tree. However, the parish council sees that having a tree protection order in place doesn't mitigate against correct maintenance of the tree, and there are actually, it does give us routes to actually assist with the appropriate management, as Chair has previously said. That's all I've got to really say. I think it should go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Okay. There's nobody else in public speaking, so we go straight on to questions from members. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Jenny.
When I read the report, I noticed it had been braced. I also noticed that it had been pollarded in the past, and a neighbour had expressed concern about the height and wanted the height reduced. With the advice of the officer, if the TPO, could those works be done again to make it a better form and reduce the height?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, subject to an application being made, works can be done to that tree. So the purpose of the tree preservation order is to review, assess, and then where those works are appropriate, permit them. So it is clear that works have been done to that tree, and once works are done to a tree, you need an ongoing programme of maintenance and management. So we would expect to see future applications come in for this specimen, should the TPO be confirmed, and provided that those works do not do not damage the tree or lead to its decline, then we would seek to approve those. So the TPO there is protect the tree and its longevity and its health and well-being.
Yes, Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you just confirm, Griff, there's no fee charged for an application to do work on a TPO, on a tree with a TPO?
Yes, there is currently no fee for a works to a tree covered by a preservation order. Fees are set by central government, so we wouldn't be able to control that, but at the moment there are no fees for that.
Any more questions? If not, does anybody wish to propose the officer advice, which is to confirm the TPO? Martin Brown. Anybody prepared to second? Yes, Mark Ryder. Thanks. Okay. Right. Mark, do you want to speak now or at all? As a seconder? Sorry, I'm trying to stick to the procedure, even though it doesn't really apply that much to planning, but...
No, I'm convinced that this is the way forward. Recognises the status of the tree in the village, puts measures in place to control works on that, and the landowner's rights are protected as well in terms of providing a process for doing that. So I'm convinced it's a right way forward. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Lorraine?
Please excuse me if I shout because I can't hear myself. I was very pleased to hear that the parish council are willing to assist with the maintenance of the tree. Very welcome, because very often it's left completely to the landowner. So I was very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Martin, did you want to say anything? Or
Just to say it's a magnificent tree. The only concern I think several of us had looking at it, that if it fell, it could fall on the houses below. But as we've heard discussed, work can be done and approval will be given if necessary. So I support the TPO.
Griff's just going to jump in quickly.
Sorry, it's unusual for me to come in on debate. I just wanted to clarify that, Councillor Patrick, the representative from the parish council said they support the TPOs in principle. I haven't got from that they were suggesting that they would support the landowner in the tree, but nevertheless, we wouldn't be able to control that anyway. So we shouldn't be, that would be a civil matter between the parish council and the landowner. What we're looking at is the immunity of the tree. So just to clarify that just to note, thank you.
Yes, Lucas.
I definitely heard the word assist. Yeah, so somewhere in what he said. So I don't necessarily need that clarifying, but I'd support this TPO, and I look towards a constructive cooperation between the landowner, the officers of the council, and the local parish council.
Okay, there's no more debate. We can go straight to a vote. So button should be up soon. 1 for yes. I'm sure yes. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 to abstain. Okay. Okay. So that's agreed. A TPO is confirmed. Okay. Second item. Where are we? Okay, Sunnyside Nurseries, Cam Dursley, redevelopment of site for storage and distribution use and dance studio, ancillary office, cafe and showroom. Associated works, infrastructure and improvements to existing access onto the A38. Case officer is Rachel Brown, who should be introducing her report in a moment. He's just trying to get the laptop sorted. Okay. It's Rachel. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located in open countryside on the A38 at Gossington. The site is a previous employment site, having been the Sunnyside Garden Centre, which is now closed. A previous outline planning permission was allowed the redevelopment of the site for industrial and storage use, retail use and offices. That permission remains extant. The proposal is for the redevelopment of the site for storage and distribution use, office, showroom, cafe and a dance studio. The principal local plan policies in respect to this development are CP15, EI4 and EI11. These policies seek to restrict development in the open countryside and direct development towards locations in a hierarchical manner. Locations in the open countryside are at the bottom of that hierarchy. This is the proposal in more detail. The proposal is for 3 buildings and the provision of 44 car parking spaces. This is the block plan showing the layout and with some landscaping. So a single building here, building A, is for the storage of products to be sold via the online business and transported to customers. Building A will have a floor space over a single storey of 963 square metres and a height of 6 metres. This is the elevation of the building. Building B is to provide the showroom, office space and a canteen and cafe. Building B would have a combined floor space of over 2 floors of 525 square metres, broken down into office of 243 square metres, a cafe of 109 square metres and showroom of 173 square metres. The building again would be 6 metres in height. Building C is for the dance studio. The proposal is for 4 studios to be split over 2 floors with a total floor space of 902 square metres, and this building would be slightly taller at 8 metres in height. This is the street seen there, and the building shown there is the existing house, which is not part of the application site. That just shows you the different level heights in the buildings. Officer's recommendation is for refusal as set out in the late pages, which you've all seen. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Rachel. Right, public speaking. I think we've got Gordon Craig. You don't have a time limit, Gordon, but as I always say, we appreciate brevity if possible. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague Lindsay Green had hoped to be here tonight as well, but unfortunately she couldn't make it. So I have a statement to read out from her, which I plan to do first, and then I have a very short one that I'll just tag onto the back of that one for myself, because she covers a lot of the ground in hers, so let's not cover it twice. Okay, so I'll kick off. I would like to speak in support of the application on the former Sunnyside Garden Centre. This site has been empty for a number of years and did previously come to Development Control Committee some time ago for planning permission that was subsequently permitted. Stroud District Council has a real opportunity here to support the businesses which will be occupying this site. You may or may not have heard of Sally Prout. As a dance school and teacher, she is very well known, not just in this area, through the many thousands of young people who have been taught by her at her dance school. But Sally is also known more widely, nationally, and I would imagine also internationally. As you can see from the letter of support from the Royal Academy of Dance in London, this site, if allowed, could become much more. And I quote, this is a quote, direct quote from that letter. "We understand that your studios will be built to the highest calibre, thus meeting our recommended guidelines for examinations and providing the best quality equipment for dancers of all ages and abilities, but particularly those at a higher level, considering further training and careers in dance. We are not aware of other studios in the area built to such a high calibre and modern specifications. Given that your new studios will be of such an excellent standard, we would be happy to consider using your studios in future for holding RAD exams, if we are running RAV sessions in the vicinity. I know that you would also be happy to host other schools and teachers' RAD exams on a more informal basis. Additionally, the RAD may also be able to utilise your building for courses, events and activities. Once built, the details can be shared with our CPD department, who run training courses for teachers, and the learning and participation team, who run courses for students." And that's the end of the quotation. Lindsay goes on, "This goes much wider than just a dance studio. It could be a centre of excellence and would be such an asset to our district and put Stroud on the map for dance. I know that some will say that this studio should be sited in a town, but I personally think it is the perfect location for a purpose-built facility, because we all know that towns and cities already have so much traffic and parking issues. To add to that would be the wrong decision, in my opinion. Did you know more students attend dance lessons than play football or any other sport? As a council, we should not be promoting the exercise, health, well-being and development that students would gain from this purpose-built facility? And I personally feel that those benefits alone far outweigh any negatives for this site. The buildings would be built to the highest level of specification, with the applicants paying huge attention to biodiversity and environmental impact. This should be commended, especially as this is a huge private investment by the applicants for the future. As I've said before, as ward members for the Berkeley Vale ward, this site sits in. I feel that this application promotes many of Stroud District Council's planned priorities, such as the site being a brownfield site, and to utilise the site for the better, promoting exercise, health and well-being, improving biodiversity and ecological impact, and ultimately to support our local businesses to expand and create new jobs in the local area. That's why I asked the committee to find in favour of this development and grant permission. And that's the end of Lindsay's statement. If I can just quickly move on now to what I would like to say. And it's just really to add a few points to that statement. My understanding is that Highways, who I'm sure you've all read the various correspondence regarding this, but Highways have now agreed new proposals from the applicant and are now supportive of the application. I hope that's been brought to your attention. Also, Slimbridge Parish Council are in support of the application, and both my district councillor colleague Lindsay, who you've just heard via me, and myself are in support of the application. It appears that the redevelopment of this brownfield site for new commercial use has the broad officer approval as well, because, as we heard, it had previously been approved. So the only fly left in the planning ointment, so to speak, is the location of the dance studio away from an area of high population. But as we have heard, this will not just be any dance studio, and it is important that it serves the whole district and wider. Interestingly, being central to the whole district was exactly the criteria that this council used when selecting a location for the district's recycling depot, which, as you know, is right next to the site. We create planning rules to cover most circumstances and to guide delegated officers. But we have DCC because we realise that good planning must occasionally cater for exceptions. This is very much a case in point, where this site was as carefully chosen for this particular dance studio, and indeed the site next to it was carefully chosen by this council as its central recycling depot. I would ask, therefore, that you approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Next, we have the applicant, Martin Rees, and your agent. I understand you're splitting the 4 minutes, 2 minutes each. I'll give you a shout if you look like you're going to go over your 2 minutes, okay? And there will be a counter up on the screen, so you can keep an eye on that too.
As you're hopefully aware, my wife Sally and I are the owners of the land formerly known as Sunnyside Garden Centre. The site has existing outline planning, as we've been told, and it's been derelict since about 2018. We submitted a full planning application on the 3rd of July 2023 to accommodate our growing e-commerce business, which sells sustainably produced products for the home. We are currently situated in Quedgeley in temporary rented accommodation. We have always had a business plan that is very environmentally conscious. Previously, we've powered all our businesses with solar roof panels and biofuel burners. We intend to do the same with the Sunnyside development. The plans also include an attenuation pond and an area set aside for biodiversity. We are proud also to be part of the ecology community. As part of the development, we're prepared to donate a small corner of the total site to support my wife's business, the Sally Pratt School of Dancing. Many of Sally's students have gone on to follow careers in dance at the highest levels, including several at the Royal Opera House. We've had over 70 letters of support for the application from former pupils, parents, members of the public. These are your constituents. Also from the Royal Academy of Dance, we've heard, Slimmage and some local ward councillors. We have an abundance of talent in the Stroud district, and that is hampered by the lack of quality facilities. Sally fully intends to remain teaching and running her existing classes in the local community. This is not a replacement studio. This new high-quality studio development will put Stroud District Council on the map for performing arts. The studios would not be commercially viable if it wasn't for the support of the family business, and in reality, it will not happen unless this application is approved. We respectfully request that you consider the information with an open mind and make what is, we believe, the correct decision for Stroud District to allow this to go ahead. It is privately funded development that will bring wealth, employment and community facilities to a derelict brownfield site. Thank you for this opportunity to address the DCC.
Thank you. John, you'll have 2 minutes as well, and again, it'll be up on the screen. I will have to cut you off if you start to go over. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As we just heard, the County Highways Authority have no objection to our proposal, and this is no longer a reason for refusal. The issue relating to newts simply requires further surveys, which can easily be provided either by a pre-commencement condition, we think, or could be a matter you delegate to your officers to resolve prior to determination. Again, as we heard, your officers have no objections to proposed B8 units or the offices, and therefore their principal concern relates to the dance studio, which they consider should be located in a town centre. However, as you know, this isn't a greenfield site, and it was formerly a commercial garden nursery and benefits from planning permission for a mix of uses that includes B2, B8, as well as offices and retail, both of which are also town centre uses. Our transport assessment has shown that our proposal will result in fewer car journeys than the previous use, and we consider that this should be taken into account when considering our proposal. We have explained in an addendum to our planning statement that there are no other suitable buildings in the district towns that provide the modern dance facilities which will allow students to progress. And currently students from the Southwest and the Midlands need to travel to London to take their exams. Having a modern dance school on our site would significantly reduce the length of car journeys they would need to take. We also consider that our proposal complies with your policies. The local plan recognises that leisure development can make an important contribution to the economy and generate employment opportunities. The site is also, we think, very well related to the first-tier settlements of Cam and Dursley. In conclusion, we consider our proposal to redevelop a derelict employment site with alternative uses complies with your employment and leisure policies and should be seen in a positive light by bringing back into viable use, contributing to the local economy and creating a genuine centre of excellence for dance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right, questions from members, and we do have a representative from County Highways here as well. You can answer any questions you might have on the highways issues. You should all have had, well, you have had a chance to read through the latest papers on the highway submission. Any questions? Yes, Victoria, and then
Thank you, Chair.
Gary.
We know this site quite well. It's come to us a few times over the years at DCC. Can I ask, and I'm not sure who to direct my question to, but has Stroud District Council ever tried to purchase the Sunnyside Nursery site?
Well, that's a civil matter, I'm sure, is what Griff's going to say, but do you want to actually come in with a bit more? There's nothing really more to say than that. It's I don't know the answer to that. I don't think Griff does. Do you, Griff?
I'm not aware of any purchase of the land or offer to purchase the land by the district council, but as the chair has said, land ownership is not a material planning consideration. So along with the applicant, who owns the land, who the applicant is, shouldn't be given weight as part of that planning decision. It should be based against the policies in the development plan.
One more question, and this one's directed to you, Rachel. In your opening statement, you said that this is open countryside, but it was always an existing employment site. It's been changed its use from the Prince of Wales Hotel right the way down there. There's lots of different businesses already. So I'm a bit confused how it's classed as open countryside. And obviously we have a local plan that's got 8,000 houses that are going to be coming in and around that site potentially. I know that's not been decided yet. How is that? Just for my own clarity, how is that open countryside, please?
Yes, thank you for your question. The site is outside the settlement development limits and therefore in planning terms is considered as open countryside. That's the classification of land not within the settlement development limit in terms of planning.
Gary?
We've heard a lot about the dance studio, but not very much about the cafe and the canteen. Is there any way we can restrict the use of that? Because actually that might produce more traffic than the dance. So is there any way that we could restrict that to employees and dance studio users?
I would say that that condition would be unenforceable. We wouldn't be able to control who uses that. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't pass the test of being enforceable.
Any more questions? Yes, Lucas.
I read here on page 36 that surveys for Great Crested Newts can't be left to planning conditions, according to judicial reviews. And so where they are present, planning authorities should be applying the same test to which the license applications are subject. So that would mean that this planning application would have to be withdrawn, and then they would first have the Great Crested Newts arrangements all done and then could apply. How do I interpret that?
Yeah, that's covered in the late papers to some extent. Well, should be covered completely. The situation is that yes, they haven't gone down the district licensing route for Great Crested Newts, and they haven't done any surveys, which they can't do currently because it's not the right season. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay. So that is being. It wouldn't have to be withdrawn, basically. Anyway, I'll let Rachel explain the actual procedure.
Yeah, so, yes, thank you, Chair. What's happened is we've had some, since I wrote my committee report, we've had some further reports submitted by the applicant, and this has demonstrated that our biodiversity officer has reviewed these reports and is happy that the likelihood of the impacts of Great Crested Newts is low, but it can't be discounted. So whilst they don't have to go down the district licensing route, we still need some further information to ensure that we safeguard the Great Crested Newts. That further information can't be conditioned because we need to ensure that that the mitigations or compensations proposed are appropriate and deliverable before we determine the application. Okay, does that help?
So just to clarify, the application wouldn't need to be withdrawn if, at the end of debate, committee were minded to permit this development. Then I'm told, and which makes sense, that that permission would be delegated to officers. It would be delegated to officers to permit once the biodiversity issues have been sorted out. So. Effectively, we would say, fine, we're happy with the development. Officers will do the official issuing of the permission once our biodiversity officer and the applicants, ecologists, have sorted out all the issues around the Great Crested Newts, and our biodiversity officer is happy that the mitigation is in place, the precautionary working methods, etc. And it's pretty clear from the reports that there is a chance that Great Crested Newts could be affected, but it's a fairly low one. So it's really a technical matter of how the mitigation is worked out. And once we're happy with that, then officers will be able to officially issue the permission. Okay. Any more questions? Yes, Gary, and then Hayden.
Sorry. It's a bit similar to my question about the cafe, but really the usage of it, I'm actually quite persuaded by the sustainability argument that will stop them having to travel to London and to Birmingham. Having said that, is there anything we could do to ensure that the dance lessons that take place in Cam and Minchinhampton aren't displaced and moved here? I know that the applicant tells us it wouldn't happen, but things change and ownership of this studio might change. Is there anything we can do to prevent that occurring?
No.
If I may as well, Councillor Luff, whilst a new dance facility may provide facilities that are closer than London or Birmingham, you'll note from Rachel's report that the site is not well accessed by sustainable transport methods themselves. So the nearest bus stop, Rachel will correct me if I'm wrong, is something like 1.5 kilometres away, 1 kilometre away. There are no pavements along the A38. Whilst there is a cycle route, it is on street, it's just painted off. The train station, Cam and Dursley, is about 2 miles away by road, served by regional and local services. So, I accept that there is an argument that you could reduce the need to travel. However, this development would be dependent on the private motor car. Thank you.
Hayden, and then Helen.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm not sure if it was you. Anyway, there's been reference made to the previous use as a garden centre. Can you confirm if it was ever granted permission as a garden centre, or did it just obtain it through use? It is a rhetorical question, to be honest.
Looking through the history, I can't find anything relating to the original use as a garden centre.
Helen?
I'm just wondering if we have any actual numbers in terms of the numbers of workshops or classes that might be delivered at this, or exams, or like the anticipated number of journeys that might be made to the new dance centre, because that does seem important. As Victoria said, it was previously, it's an employment site, so we know that journeys are made, or have been made in the past to and from this site. It's I wanted to mention about the transport. I think Cammon Dursley Station being 2 miles away is actually not that far. And if there were, for example, Saturday workshops, I'm wondering whether something that the dance school or the organisers would consider would be pickups from the station to pick up people who weren't able to travel by car. Because I do think that's going to be a problem for some of the teenagers. Sorry, I'm probably going into debate here. My question was about numbers, if we have an idea of the actual numbers. Thank you.
Haven't got the actual numbers of classes that would happen each day, but and my understanding is they would be early evening classes and the occasional private one-to-one tuition classes as well. But so we don't have any actual specific numbers of classes that would be carried out at the dance studio.
We're just, Councillor Fenton, we'll just bring up the floor plan of the dance studio. So, top left is ground floor, top right is first floor. So you've got 2 studios there on the ground floor and 2 studios or 1 big studio that could operate on the first floor. It would be very difficult to apply a condition that passed the tests of a planning condition to limit the operation of those studios within the overall opening hours. So you would have to assume that up to 4 dance classes could carry on at any particular time within the capacity of each of those rooms. So just showing you there what that would look like on the ground, as it were. But yeah, that would have to be the assumption because there isn't sufficient control in the planning system to require anything else. Or we're not satisfied that we can add that control.
And we haven't been given like an intended plan showing anticipated numbers of either journeys or students or... No. Okay.
Yeah, no, Rachel's saying she hasn't been furnished with that information. Thank you.
Yes, Lucas.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's going to happen when Ms. Proud finally succumbs to the effects of longevity. What happens to the site then? I mean, for me, it's a big question then that the cafe use could take over. We would get something like a service station along the A38. And I'm wondering whether and that's my fear that I have. I'm all in a lot of ways for it. I think it's a good new use.
Sorry, Lucas, is this a question?
Yeah, so for me, can we link it to Mrs. Proud's own use?
So if I understand the question correctly, it's would we be able to make this a personal permission? Yeah. So Rachel is just going to ping through. I'll just click through. What we are going to show you now is the guidance on, so this is the national guidance on the application of personal permissions. So planning permissions run with the land and they're associated with the use class that you permit. A change of use where it falls outside the same use class would require planning permission in its own right. Class E is very wide these days. So any Class E use any alternative Class E use could happen in any parts of those buildings. But basically, the guidance, I'll let you read it there, is that we shouldn't be putting on personal permissions except in exceptional circumstances. So in type of exceptional circumstance that I've dealt with most in my career is if you have a new Gypsy and Traveller site where we're permitting that on that particular need to meet a protected characteristic. So that's the type of thing that we might think is an exceptional circumstance.
Okay, any more questions? Lorraine? Oh, sorry, Martin. I forgot about you, Martin, then Lorraine.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite familiar with the site. I used to visit it when it was a nursery a few years back before it closed, and I passed through it, past it every time I go to work each day. I was just picking up perhaps a point that Councillor Fenton raised in terms of accessibility and transportation, because I would have thought that the studio could organise a minibus to pick up people from Camandursey Station, which is not a million miles away, only a couple of miles away. And I do know there is a track that goes from the Slimbridge roundabout, not all the way, but some of the way back towards the location of the proposed location of the dart studio, off on the Slimbridge side. And the cycle routes are well frequented already, and I don't personally think that there's an issue there with cycling, because I think you have got a cycle route there. It's not very far from the Slimbridge roundabout, not very far from Slimbridge or Catton. Whether they need
Sorry, Martin, I'm struggling a bit.
The question is sort of really to the highways as to whether any consideration needs to do to further improve that cycling routes to make it safer, because I think they're pretty good at the moment, but in terms of any enhancements.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So the development would have to mitigate its impact, not fix existing issues. So in terms of, I don't think it would be reasonable for this development to provide more cycle infrastructure that would meet the tests of a planning condition or contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lorraine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had lots of questions for highways, but fortunately for them, they've answered most of them already. Talking about trips, vehicle journeys, do we have numbers for the amount of trips that go in and out of the recycling next door? And do we have numbers for the amount of trips that go in and out of the motor auctions up the road?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Patrick. I think you might know what I'm going to say, which is that each application needs to be assessed on what's in front of you. So we are not looking here at the existing operations of the Ubico site next door or the operations of the auction house down the road. What we're looking at here is if we take the baseline of the local highway network in the vicinity and add to that the journeys by this development, would that have a severe impact on highway safety? So we don't have those details, but they're also not hugely relevant for you to make your decision this evening.
Okay, any more questions? If not, does anybody wish to propose officer advice which is to refuse? Or does anybody wish to propose something else? Aidan?
I'll propose moving officer's advice to refuse.
Okay, seconder? No, I'm looking for a seconder, so I'm looking at everybody. Anybody wish to propose? In which case, I could do it from the chair, but Martin, okay. Martin Brown, seconded. Okay. That gets us into debate, which is the way we should be going. Otherwise, we can go round and round in circles sometimes. Well, yes, but nobody did. Hayden proposed. I thought you said no. Yes, but at that point I was looking for a seconder for Hayden's. Sorry. But we end up in debate. We end up in the same place anyway, so. Okay. Right. Martin, did you want to speak now as seconder, or do you want to speak later on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I like the idea of the dance facility and all the things that have been said about about the good thing that would be. But the basic problem is, to me, the basic problem is the first reason proposed for refusal by the officers, which is that this would inevitably be wholly or almost entirely got to by car. There's been mention of the cycle track along. I've cycled along there, and I know that some cyclists like me and Councillor Fenton might cycle on the A38, but kids going to dance classes are not going to, let's be honest, especially in early evening, nor walk. So it's that transport sustainability that, to me, is the decisive factor here. Good thing, but in the wrong place, I'm afraid.
Yes, Victoria, and then Jenny, and then Lorraine.
I'm just going to come back to you a little bit on that, Martin, because if it doesn't go here, it's going to have to go somewhere else, and then people are going to travel further by car or further by bike or further by bus to another position. I know not necessarily in our district, but the fact of the matter is that we live in towns and villages. We don't have the infrastructure. We know that. And I kind of disagree that would be a one point as to refuse when, all right, we're not quite in the settlement boundary that's included in the local plan, but we are nestled up to this development that is coming potentially to Berkeley, to Wislow, to Camp East. It is right up against that fence. So there could be 50,000 cars coming into here that are going to be driving to Bath, Bristol. And I know these aren't necessarily material and planning reasons, but I think we have to use our logic into what's actually going to be proposed. Yes, let's look at it on its own merit. It's a really good design, and it could be such an ass. I really am. I've got into this to be passionate and to find something exciting. This is the first thing I have seen in our district for a long time that could really do something for our community, our people, students, kids, leisure, tourism. And I'm really struggling with the fact that a bit of extra car use in what's already going to be becoming more car efficient town, villages in where we live. I've got a lot more to say, but that was just to come back on that point, sorry.
Right, Jenny, then Lorraine, then Mark.
I'd like to say that I think the performing arts bring a lot to the economy of the district, and I'm minded to vote for this. As for the argument that people can't get there sustainably, I took my grandchildren to swimming today. There wasn't one child that went to Stratford Leisure Centre and walked or cycled there. They all came in their parents' cars. Why should we put a different value on this to what we do elsewhere? I also know that we find it hard when girls become teenagers to get them to keep exercising and doing things that are healthy for their body. And while they don't always want to do team sports, they do like dance. So I think it's good for their health. And if I had £1 for every time I sat here and heard the words, put it on a brownfield site, I would say I could retire, but I already am. But it's nice to see something going on Brownsfield site. I think this has a lot going for it, and we should, on balance, pass it.
Yes, Lorraine.
Jenny's just almost said what I was going to say. If you live in our area, you will be aware of the amount of children that are transported by car very short distances. Very short distances. If there is a parent with more than one child, they're always going to take their car to wherever they're going. They're not going to even if there was a pavement going up the A38 that was safe to walk on, they're not taking 3 children up the A38 on foot. So we're used to everybody, sorry, I can't hear myself now. We're used to everybody going everywhere by car. It's the nature of where we live. And it isn't very far. It's not a very long journey. And did I read in here they're going to be putting some electrical charging points in as well? So that can't be bad, can it? It's a brilliant project. And I can't really see what the problem is with it.
Mark, and then Gary, and then Helen.
Thank you, Chair. I think, like Councillor Miles said, it's the balance. And that's what we need to do on DCC, is look at many different aspects of our policies and the application and come to a balance. And there's so many positives in this application. Just to see something happen at Sunnyside finally and get it resolved and actually get it delivering something for our community. And this is a mixed-use development. I personally have concerns over the highways and safety. I use the A38 every day, and I remember the long discussions with highways over the previous application. Transport and highways was a big factor in the last determination, as it has been a focus on this one as well. But the officers are satisfied on those concerns. One of the things that I was thinking about in the discussion with councillors here about the car use. Of course, generally we want to promote sustainable travel, but everything does have to be in balance. It's a case of what we're getting on one side compared to what we're losing on the other. Where in my particular ward, 100 metres away from our Stroud district boundary is a dance studio. We're in Quedgeley, Hardwick. It's the urban edge of Gloucester, middle of urban development, and yet the challenge that dance studio has is constantly car parking. It's got lots of car parking, but I think that's because this type of facility draws from a wider area. If we put it in the middle of Stroud, it wouldn't be just Stroud residents that were going to that, or in the middle of Berkeley, it wouldn't just be Berkeley residents. We're drawing from a wider area across our district for this sort of facility, and so I think we've got to accept that there will be a lot of car use, and this is right on the A38 and is accessible for that. And if the officers are convinced that the safety concerns have been addressed, then I'm happy to go along with that. And like Councillor Gray was saying, I see all the positives that this is delivering for the community, and we can't control what happens in the future. We can only decide what happens now. And I think this has a lot going for it. So I'm personally behind the application and minded to approve. Thank you.
Gary, then Helen.
On DCC, we obviously do consider difficult decisions, and this particular site kind of has a hierarchy for me. The office and the distribution, if they were on their own, I think it wouldn't be here. It would been improved probably, because the traffic would be much less. And then we have the dance studio. I take the point that people are going to drive here, because very few people are going to do it from Cam and Dursley. So there is going to be more traffic because of that. But I can kind of understand that, balancing that against the importance that it has nationally or regionally for those. But I really struggle with a cafe, and a cafe that's 240 square metres. These distribution centres don't really employ very many people. An office, I don't think, is going to employ that many people. It just seems too big. And that's what worries me, that we get lots of traffic that flows for a cafe. And we certainly, if we were here saying, let's put a cafe there, I don't think we'd be saying yes. So it's really a balance about two things which I think we would probably quite easily say yes to. One thing we'd probably say no to, and another one that we probably, everyone's got their own view, would probably be on the fence about, because it has some really good things, but it does lead to quite a lot of unsustainable. I don't get the argument that people will cycle down the A38 and get there, because this is a road that probably only 5% of cyclists will do because it's really fast to get in there. Hordes, yes, but people who are really keen on cycling, these aren't, the teenagers that were expecting to go there. These are people who are doing cycling as a hobby, and turning right across the A38 if you're coming from Slimbridge, that seems like, we almost have a duty to stop people cycling that way because it is pretty dangerous. And then we force people into cars. So it's a really difficult decision. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm not even sure which way I'm going to vote, but I can see how it goes both ways.
Yes, Helen?
Well, I was going to say that I'm increasingly cautious about voting against officer advice. So I'm bearing that in mind here. And the policies in the local plan that have been quoted. But on the other hand, I tend to agree with people who say that these are great designs. This is a great use of a brownfield site. I remember visiting the site back in 2021, soon after I started on planning committee. And the fact it's still derelict now is really sad. And I can see how, yes, the A38 is a busy road, but it's also a good road. It's a good road connecting Gloucester and Bristol. And that, for a project like this, that has immense advantages. The downside for me is, yes, that the young people attending this centre won't be able to get there independently. That would be ideal. If we could encourage and empower young people to get places that they wanted to go themselves. But unfortunately, the reality of this district, as someone's already said, is that we're a scattered community. We live in villages and towns and a mixture of those, and increasingly, the picture's changing as well with the developments that are in the new local plan that will change the face of Cam and Dursley. So I think in terms of all that, the fact that this site is central to our district is actually possibly the best place it could go. Someone mentioned about will Sally Prout be stopping teaching in some of the local community centres, stopping some of those classes to move them all in here? And the answer was no. But even if she did, that would create demand in those local villages and village halls and community centres for other dance teachers to come up, or even her students to come up and start teaching community-based classes. And then it seems that this centre with the top-notch facilities is going to be the one for the more advanced dancers, the older dancers, the ones who are training to go on to professional college. So as far as I can see, this plan has got so many advantages. It really works. And back to the travel, of course, that is the downside of it to me. But I think what we need to do is not just look at the number of journeys. In fact, even if we had that number, we need to compare the number of journeys with the number of journeys perhaps that the nursery generated, or the number of journeys that other businesses on the A38 generate. Or even the plans for light industry at the Sunnyside site. What would that have generated? I remember we were talking with Highways about HGV movement in and out of the site, which I think is going to be less of an issue here, in fact. So, yeah, and as I think, Jenny, you mentioned, the swimming pool has a large car park outside it at Stratford Park. I can't imagine many families take the bus into Merry Walks and then walk over to Stratford Park with pushchairs and the like to take families swimming. That large car park is used by people swimming, and many other facilities for sports and activities across the district sadly require the use of cars. So I think, although I am disappointed by one or two aspects of this, overall it's a phenomenal plan with so many benefits to the district. I feel that I'm probably going to be voting for it against officer advice, I'm afraid, on this occasion. But, I hope overall the committee's minded to move in that direction as well. Thank you.
Martin?
Thank you, Chair. A lot of, I think, what I've been thinking has already been articulated. It is a balance because it is a mixed proposal of developments there with the online business, warehousing, cafe and the dance studio. I think on the transport issue, I think the reality is that people do go by car, whether I like it or not. they take their children half a mile down the road to the school in Coley, I know that, and they're certainly going to take them to the dance school, but some of those journeys might be combined, so it might not be a separate journey to the dance school, it might be combined with other things. And if it is on a regional basis, then again, they're going to travel by car. I think there is an opportunity potentially with the railway station there, with Cam and Dursley, to set up some sort of minibus solution that might mitigate some of that. I am, know the site as many other councillors do, and I'd always, drive past, think it is a shame that nothing's happening there, and it's a brownfield site, and something ought to happen there. And I think it is quite exciting to have the potential for a regional and perhaps nationally important dance studio there. It is going to bring traffic, but within Stroud, we need to encourage leisure, we need to encourage businesses, and therefore I'm sort of minded to go against officer recommendation in this instance, and request that the planning application is permitted, because it is difficult, but I think on balance that's where I'm minded to go. Thank you.
Yeah, Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question, actually, if I may add to what Councillor Luff said about the CAF and the size and the mixed use. I was of the impression that the cafe was there for parents to watch their kids dance and train and learn. It wasn't going to be an open cafe for, like we have Leafing Ground at the Cam in Dursley. So I was under the impression that'd be there for maybe browsers of the shop on occasion and maybe parents watching the school. Do we have any information as to what, is it a cafe as a lone business? Is it there for site users? Was there any more information? I haven't been able to find it in my notes. And you may tell me, no, you can't tell me, but that was just quite an interesting point I thought we should discuss.
The cafe proposed is, the intention is for the users of the dance studio, well, their parents or whoever's dropping off there, to use whilst they're dancing, and for the workers. But as we said earlier, that would be something that we don't feel considered would be enforceable. How would we stop, other users coming in and use the cafe? That's what we said earlier. Okay.
No, yeah, thank you. Sorry, just the mixed use question got me thinking about that. If I can continue as well, and I won't keep Councillor long, but we've already lost the Sundula site for local employment in Cam and Dursley. It's very likely we're going to lose the Spice Factory. There's so much for this. We're constantly told at DCC that we have to take it on balance. We have to look at it as own merit. And I'm really struggling to see how SDC have voted to refuse. I really have got quite a lot of issues with this. I'd like to commend the designers for the applicants coming, what they're trying to achieve in our community, which is constantly being railroaded by just housing and development with no infrastructure, no employment, no businesses, no opportunity. I will be voting for it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? In which case, nobody else. Hayden, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I do move the officer's recommendation, I agree with many of the points that have been made. It is a fantastic design, and I also congratulate the architects on what they've done. Just coming back to a few of the points that have been made in debate, I'll start by reminding people that you're not here to agree with the officers. With the greatest respect to one of our most experienced officers on council, they make their recommendation, then you judge it on its merits and you make a proposal. And as long as it can be supported approximately by policy, then that's what you vote on. You can't just create something. So we're not here to just go along with officers. That's the whole point of DCC. The local plan, a couple of people have mentioned the local plan. That's, I think you're getting a long way ahead of yourself. We're here on Thursday, but there's a long way to go with that. So I don't think that's relevant at all. It's been mentioned that it's a brownfield site many times. Yes, that's why we gave permission on it not so long back for the uses that we thought were appropriate for it at the time. Other businesses in the area have been mentioned and how many visits they get to them, but that's not relevant to this application. As has been mentioned, we judge everything on its merits that's put in front of us. Other uses nearby are not relevant. the cafe and the use of the site, the use of the dance school, that has been mentioned many times. And as Rachel and Griff has mentioned, you cannot condition them. I can't remember exact conditions have got to be enforceable, acceptable, reasonable, and I can't remember the criteria. Have I covered them there? Can't be covered by any other mechanism? You'll know it off by heart, something like that anyway. And anyway, so you could not condition that. So the cafe could be used by anyone. And my colleague, Councillor Craig, mentioned in his submission about interpreting policy. And I agree that we're here and we can perhaps take a slightly different view on what policy means. But Rachel mentioned there are CP15, EI4 and EI11. I won't go through all of them because that would be a bit boring. CP15 you should know anyway, it's about open countryside. But let me just read out delivery policy EI11, which is promoting sport, leisure and recreation. And it reads, planning applications for new sports, cultural, leisure and recreational facilities or improvements and extensions to existing facilities will be permitted provided, number one, the proposals are connected to and associated with existing facilities. They are located at a site that relates well to the settlement hierarchy in the district, or they are intended to meet specific rural needs that cannot be appropriately met at settlements within the settlement hierarchy. I don't think it can meet that test. That's number one. Number three, I'll leave out the ones that I think it probably are less relevant. Number three, the development can be made readily accessible to adequate bus, cycling and walking links for the benefit of non-car users. I think it would struggle with that, as has been mentioned several times. And number four reads, cycle/vehicle access and on-site cycle vehicle parking would be provided to the adopted standards. So cycle/vehicle access. I think those are the 3 points in that delivery policy EI11. So yes, I understand that we can sometimes take a different view to officers on how to interpret policy, but I think there is a limit and it would be very difficult to prove that we could meet all of those. There was an application, not too dissimilar to this, down at Purton for use of one of the canal side house things that were built in the 1800s or something like that. And it was going to be used by a university for a rowing school. And this policy prevented that from happening when it came to DCC because it was just not appropriate. It could not meet those tests. And I think in this case, unfortunately, if this policy these are important in any way, I think, contrary to what Councillor Gray keeps saying, I think we would struggle to be able to make that match this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. I've got a couple of other people came in after I asked you to sum up. So now I've got Lucas and then Victoria.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I actually feel that a 10 by 10 cafe isn't all that big. By the time you take a counter and a kitchen and anything off it, there's not a lot of space. There's a comment I would like to make. So I take what Councillor Jones says also to heart. And I've been flip-flopping on this, I think, the whole week, sort of thinking, well, come on, and then thinking, well, actually, hold on, is this opening the door here for something else that we're not even aware of? And hence my comment also about this application being strongly linked with a particular dance teacher. And so what happens, how can this site be used or possibly exploited when these permissions are in place? So I still got the reservations, and I think it will wait till the time of the vote before I cast my one way or the other. It's a difficult one.
No? Okay. Hayden, did you want to sum up?
Well, I think I have already, except to say that the applicant and a lot of the correspondents that are online have mentioned about how this is a very well-known dance teacher. My dancing days are long behind me, but I understand that, and you've had this intervention from the Royal Academy of Dance and suggesting that it would be a draw for people from far and wide, which is fantastic, and I agree that would be great to put the district on the map. But I just wonder, coming back to the EI11 policy that I mentioned earlier, if it does indeed draw people from far and wide, they're going to get to Stroud, either going to drive all the way here and then drive out to that, or they're going to come on the train and then have to get into a car and drive out to it. That's why these policies are put in place. And if I don't agree with some of them, I have to say, but if these policies are important and we want to stick by them, I personally, completely contrary to what Councillor Gray says, wonder how we could get around that policy for this site. Thank you.
Anybody else for debate? If not, I'm not actually going to debate, but what I think I will do is, from the way the meeting's been going, it looks like there is a possibility that the vote might go to permit. And in that event, officers, given, as Hayden's rightly said, these are important policies, local plan policies, and we need to be sure that we are clear on why we don't think those policies apply in this case, and why we're prepared to permit against officer advice. Yeah, so what I was going to say was that if the vote does go that way, then I will be looking to, I'll probably try and sum up what I see as the reasons that the committee have gone that way, and see if you're happy with that. And also, of course, it will have to be delegated to officers, but we'll sort that out when we see how the vote goes. So if everybody's sure they're done with debate, we'll set up for the vote. So it'll be, sorry, Lorraine? Yeah?
Page 34, where we've got more specifically policy EL11 states that, and we get down to number 1. The proposals are connected to, etc., and it also states here they are, or they are intended to meet specific rural needs that cannot be appropriately met at settlements within the settlement hierarchy. That's it.
Okay, yes, that is one of the reasonings behind the policy, yeah. Yes, the idea that ideally facilities like this should be situated within existing settlements, and you have to find a good reason why they can't be situated there. It could, yeah, well, that could be one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons we have a stadium. And, well, supposedly we will be getting a football stadium out on the motorway A38, that there was nowhere else to put it. And that was taken as an exception, which I was going to refer to later on at some point. Right, are we ready for the vote? Okay, so it's 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 to abstain. Is it? Yes, sorry. Oh, yes, the motion, well, the motion is to follow officer advice and permit. I don't think we need anything more. Oh, sorry. Yeah, left brain thing there.
The motion is...
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Griff will do it because he'll probably get it right.
Okay, to clarify, what you're voting on is the motion put forward by Councillor Jones to refuse, subject to the 2 refusal reasons listed on the late pages, which were circulated to you yesterday, and you have a printed copy of you in front of it. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I may have been getting ahead of myself a bit there. So yes, it's 1 to refuse, 2 is no, 3 abstain. Okay. Oops, pressed the wrong button. Right, so that fails, yes, in which case we need to have another vote. We didn't have another vote, yes, so we need another motion on which we will vote. So does anybody wish to propose something other than refusal? Yes, Mark.
I'm happy to propose that we approve and delegate that decision timing to the officers based on them satisfying the protection of the great crested newt concerns that have been raised in the report.
Yeah, Griff just wants to come in quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Ryder. What I just want to pick out from you for the minutes, for the record of the meeting, is we just need the reasons why you feel that we could put aside CP 15, EI 4 and EI 11. So if you could just expand on your planning reasons behind that motion, please.
So I'm guessing this is going to be too broad, but I consider this application as an exception. And it's only by exception that on balance that the scheme is approved. So to define that in specific policies, but I'll need to work with my colleagues here on that. Because for me, it's just on balance. The scheme, I believe the scheme should go ahead because I can't talk tonight. That on balance, this is an exception for what will be provided by this application for the district. So we need to work on defining that in planning terms. But that's the reason for my proposal.
Okay, if I may, if I just bring up policy I11 for you, for those of you who don't have your local plan in front of you. The two principal policies are CP15, which you should mostly know, CP15. So CP15 is a policy which directs development to our settlement hierarchy, and then that's on the board for you to screen there. So it says that the exceptions for development in the countryside are that it's essential to be there for a farming enterprise. It should be there to promote public enjoyment of the countryside for the rural economy, in sport, tourism, etc. It's a rural exception site for housing, so that doesn't apply now. It's enabling development for heritage. Well, I think we'd all agree that doesn't apply. Replacement dwelling, I think, again, we'd agree that doesn't apply. Involve existing community facilities. There are no community facilities on site at the moment. So I think, again, we'd agree that that doesn't apply. So EI 11, which is on page 34, if Councillor Patrick's comment was right, sets out what the requirements of those policies are. So, Councillor Ryder, you might just want to look at what's listed there and then expand on your reasons as to why you feel that the development ultimately complies with, or that balance should take a different approach. Thank you.
Yes, Victoria.
Can we not say, in terms of what we're talking about right now, that actually CP2, in terms of strategic growth, outweighs the benefits versus the our EI 11 policies? The wider picture, the full picture outweighs that balance, and therefore is grounds to go against officer refusal.
Did you have another question, Lorraine, while officers are checking that? Two more what? Questions or? Oh. Okay. Can you? I think officers are a bit occupied at the moment, so we'll let them sort that first. Yes, Mark.
Just on EI 11, I do think that there is some compliance there in terms of one. A lot of this is down to the reading of the policy and how we define it. But in terms of meeting specific rural needs, in defining those needs, I think in terms of a comment that Councillor Fenton made about looking at the location of this facility in our district, then perhaps this location central to the district is perhaps the best location for such a facility, because we're drawing from across the district, not from one particular settlement. And so I think in terms of number one, I could define it in that way. I don't know if a planning inspector would define it in the same way, but I would say that, in terms of point one of EI 11, that can be defined as a acceptable location for this facility in our district. So yeah, a lot of the other ones I don't think really apply here, but that's my point on.
Griff's going to come back in, and then I'm going to see what Lorraine wants to. Okay, right. Do you want to read something out quickly, and then the officers can come in?
Thank you. The key word in paragraph 1 here is the word or. It says, or they are intended to meet specific rural needs. I wanted to add to that, 2, the development would not harm the character, appearance and amenities of the area. And 7, it is not subject to any other overriding environmental or other material planning constraints.
Okay, Griff.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just going to go back to Councillor Ryder and say if that's your interpretation of EI11, then that's fine. So I've got written down here, and I shall just peer at Katie to make sure she's got it for the notes, is that in your view, the location of the facility central to the district is a factor that should be given more weight because it allows for a draw across the district than any particular settlement, and if I may put my own words in there, within the settlement hierarchy. Yeah, so that was my interpretation of what you've written down. Katie's tapping away with that. So that could be your motion if that's what you would like it to be.
Yes, thank you, Griff. I think that does surmise it. As I say, for me, it's an exception. So we are putting the policies to in that balance there, and in some cases, in some exceptions, we do have to, I think, go against our own policies. And I know there is a question here of defending that if the permission needs to be defended, but surely there are cases, if we can define some reasoning here on our policies, then fantastic. But just my thinking overall was this is an exception to solve all of those things that have come up in the debate about a solution for this location, facilities for our district. All of those things weigh, in my mind, on one side, and our policies need to be taken into consideration, but it's an exception to that in many ways as well.
Yeah, well, look, lots of the words you've used are words that I had in reserve for this particular situation, and I just wonder whether that was what I was thinking, was that your thinking is likely to be that it's a unique cultural and artistic facility which doesn't serve a particular settlement but a wide range of settlements, and draws people in from a wide geographical area. So that is probably the main counter to the idea of it having to be in a particular settlement, I guess. Yeah. Sorry, Victoria, did you want to have another? Sorry.
Just before we move on, I just just to keep my notes up to date. Councillor Ryder is making a motion, and you're making a suggestion. Are we making a suggestion to alter the motion, or?
I was just making a suggestion for some additional wording or clarity at the start of it as to the reason, the general reason for why it can be seen as an exception to some of the policies.
Yeah, I think the bit that I took from that in terms of the wording is that this is an exceptional case in terms of the service that is offered for the whole district. We're not talking about just one specific location or one particular settlement. We're talking about a district-wide facility here in connection to the dance studio. So I think that would be useful for the wording.
And a unique facility on the lines of the skate park that we used to have at Brimscombe Port, the football stadium that we may or may not eventually see out by the motorway. Do you think we've got enough now for you to be clear on the reasoning?
Yes, I think that you have a motion here that you can work with and vote on. What I would say is thank you for the comment on the delegation to officers. The issue with the great crested newts is a technical one, if you like. We can't control it by condition because it relates to European protected species. So what we would need to do is liaise with the applicant. My understanding, and Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we need to know the working methods. So we'd expect those to come in prior to being able to issue any decision, and then get the biodiversity officer's approval on that. So maybe we could delegate to that our 2 officers, subject to running that final information perhaps past the chair, just to make sure that the chair's happy with what we've received, just as a suggestion on how to cover that technical point.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Just in the scenario that the biodiversity officer isn't satisfied, would that come back to the committee?
Well, it's in your motion to make that. So we could either have delegated authority to refuse in the event that the biodiversity information is unacceptable, or we could bring it back to committee. Now, I think we, as a body of officers, are happy that we can get to an acceptable solution. So I think that's unlikely. I would be more concerned about the time factor on this than necessarily getting the information in. So you might want to give that a time limit before that application is either refused or referred back to you. But, it shouldn't take very long once that comes into us.
Yeah, I'm glad that to be assured that you're of the opinion that an agreement can be reached on that. And happy to take advice on what time period should be built into that. That would be useful for the motion.
I have a partner who's a director of ecology, and I have actually discussed this particular situation with her, and it is simply a question of getting the precautionary working methods sorted out, exactly how they take care on the site during construction to make sure that newts aren't harmed. I don't think it's actually going to involve doing any surveys, so I don't think there'll be any great time restrictions on it. But yeah, I would agree with Griff that it's certainly something that can be sorted out between our biodiversity officer and their ecologist. It's not a major issue. Do you have I don't think there's going to be any need for a great time.
We don't think that a time constraint, we don't think it will take very long. It should be done within a maximum of 6 months. That's quite a generous time period to do it. So if we just, note that down as a note for you. The solicitor has just had a word quickly with me about the motion to do with CP15. So whilst your motion has addressed EI11, CP15, Rachel's now displayed on the screen for you. So this is the policy which seeks to direct development, CP3 sets out a settlement hierarchy, CP15 manages development that doesn't fall within a defined settlement. So as we have stated, the officer approach is that it conflicts with this policy because it's outside of the settlement boundary. So just in clarifying your motion, if you could comment on your interpretation on CP15, please.
Yes, Victoria.
Well, they refer to the document. I just wanted to check something. The address of the site actually says Camin Dursley, and even though it comes under Slimbridge Parish Council, and on page 30 of the plan, it does say Camin Dursley, Stonehouse and Stroud. These are the district's main towns. They are the primary focus for growth and development to safeguard and enhance strategic growth as employment and service centres. So I know it technically says Slimbridge and we're under settlement, but in the plan, the first sentence is that this is the hotspot for growth and development of employment sites. So it's Camin Dursley on the address. I know there's going to be a technicality about that, but it is worth noting that where the site is, you're wrestling right up against Cammon, Dursley, Slimbridge, Berkeley, all which have been highlighted quite considerably in the plan for certain protections, growth, development. I don't know if that helps with argument against that particular.
Okay, so the settlement hierarchy is set out in CP3, which sets our tiers, and you're right, Cam, Dursley, Stonehouse and Stroud are our first tier settlements. The address of the site isn't set by us, it is in Slimbridge Parish Council, but what we're looking at is the boundary that's drawn on the proposal's maps. So it is, regardless of how close it is to that settlement, it's still outside of the defined settlement boundary. So.
Okay, and on the, sorry, wait. Okay, Mark, are you still working on anything? Just to say, I've done it, 6 months is a perfectly adequate time period. That would leave time to do surveys in season if necessary, which shouldn't be necessary.
But just having another look at CP15 and you know, it could be argued point 2 of CP15 in terms of public enjoyment, employment, sport, leisure, tourism. As Councillor Miles said, there are, you know, other things that are weighing up here in terms of fitness for this demographic. So I'm just, I don't know how to put that eloquently into words, but I would say that under point 2 of CP15, there's some alignment there, I would say, and it doesn't conflict with a lot of the principles that are mentioned there. So we're talking about the rural economy, and overall this mixed use development hits on, you know, all of those points raised in point 2, which is about enjoyment, employment, sport, leisure, tourism. So I think that would be the strongest thing I would factor on if I was referring to CP15. But again, for me, I consider this an exception. Would it be helpful to include that in the wording on CP15? Some officer advice.
Chair, if I may, thank you through you. Just to confirm, what members are doing is disagreeing with the officer's interpretation of policies. It's not an exception to the policies in the local development plan. Your interpretation of their application is different. So where the officers have said certain things don't apply, you've taken a different view. So we're not looking to exceptions against it, but we're saying how you've interpreted it. Thank you.
Yes, I think the exceptional applies to the facility rather than to the policy. Yes, Helen.
I'm just would like clarification. CP15 seems to, if that applies to the dance studio, it would also apply to the other development on this site. Is that not correct? And the fact that in 2021 we approved development on this site for light industry means that we were presumably overriding CP15 in 2021. And we debated that then and agreed to override CP15 on that occasion. Is that correct?
Chair, if I may, just to remind members, it's the application before you, not previous applications. Thank you.
So in that case, my question is this CP15 would apply not just to the dance studio, but to the other buildings proposed on the site as well. Is that correct?
So if I may, CP15 applies to any development which is outside of a defined settlement limit. What we're doing at the moment is Councillor Ryder is formulating his motion. So far, what I've got written down is in regards to EI11, you think there is a specific need for the rural location for it to be central in the district, and it draws across the district. CP15, the officer interpretation was that it was outside of that site. You've said that under point 2, where CP15 allows for development for sport, leisure and tourism when a rural location is essential. I've taken it to say that you think a rural location is essential for it to be central in the district, and therefore the sport, leisure, tourism under CP15, in your view, it would meet criteria 2. To answer Councillor Fenton's point, I don't have the 2021 here in front of us, but at that point we were looking at a different development on that site, and that was probably under EI4, but that's not what we're looking at tonight. We can pick up that at a later date, but it's not quite what we're doing now. What we're doing now is we're still focusing on Councillor Ryder's motion for us to then second in a minute once we've got that grounded.
But the planning permission that we granted in 2021 is still valid, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, Lorraine.
Could we not, can't hear myself again. Could we not add point 3? It is a rural exception site where development is appropriate, sustainable, affordable and meets an identified local need and/or.
No, I think this exception site is usually for housing, isn't it? So, but anyway, I think we're pretty much there. Mark, Mark, we just need to. Mark, we just need to agree a final wording. Do you have something that you would like to put to him and see whether he agrees with it, or does it want it to come from him?
Yeah, Chair, the officer has read out the wording on the 2 points. The only thing I think I saw that was missing there was the status of this facility as unique, which was the point that you added, and I think that is important in this case because that's why it's serving the district as a whole rather than any one settlement. So if we can add that to the first part, that with regards to the location, yeah.
Okay, so basically, so the motion is, as I see it, to delegate to permit to officers, subject to the highways conditions that have been set out. Or do we not actually need to include those? Or those conditions? I'm not sure.
So the motion, as I understand it to be, is to permit subject to conditions which will be set out by officers and agreed by the chair. But first of all, subject to the information coming in to address the Newts concern. And your reasons for that you've set out are that under EI11, you think that it needs a central location in the district because of the uniqueness of the facility and its draw. And because of that, you therefore think it complies with point 2 of CP15 because to be centrally in the district, it has to therefore end up in this rural location, is a very brief summary of all of my scribbles for the past quarter of an hour or so. So that's, as I understand it, is the motion. Councillor Wright, if you want to confirm that, we'd then be looking for a seconder elsewhere from committee.
Right, so the conditions and the acceptability of the ecology proposals would be agreed with the chair and vice chair in consultation with the chair and vice chair, and then the actual permission will be delegated to officers subject to those. And do we need to mention the time frame in the 6 months you were talking about?
Yeah, we can do, yeah.
So we're sticking a 6 months time frame. Okay. So we're okay on that?
That perfectly reflects my new position.
Okay. So I need a seconder for that, technically. Victoria? Yep. So that's Mark proposing, Victoria seconding. I'm assuming we don't need any debate. So we can go straight to a vote on that, can we? Yeah? Can we go straight to a vote on that? Everybody happy with that? Sorry, Gary.
I just want to make the point that Mark's done a fantastic job of contorting himself to get around the policies, and they just don't sit with the policies. You know, I take Victoria's point around we might want to say this is a strategic development, and I can understand that, but but the ways that we've gotten around CP 15 and EI, was it 40, 11, are, you know, it strikes me that it looks like motivated reasoning. We want to do something and we're making up an answer that actually, in the cold light of day, we would really struggle with, I think, to be honest. It is a lovely thing to do, but it's not what our policies say. And this plan, I'm relatively new to the council, but I think this is a plan that's probably been approved by the whole council. Is that right? Yeah. So the whole council, and we're here, you know, again, I might be wrong on this, but we're here to apply the plan that's been approved. Obviously not unanimously, people have disputes about it, but approved by the whole council. And we are tying ourselves in knots to come up with a solution that does something that in our hearts we want to do, but doesn't conform with the policies. You know, a dance studio is not a rural use of the countryside. It's not rural development. It could be in Dursley, and you wouldn't call it rural. I know it's convenient, but this isn't a rural use to me. Others might disagree, but it seems like we are contorting ourselves to come up with a solution. And if that's what people want to do, that's absolutely fine. But it isn't what we kind of have delegated authority from the whole council to make decisions. It isn't what that's doing. But it's up to others to vote. So I won't be voting to support this motion. But I do appreciate the hard work that Mark's put in to try and come up with a solution.
Aidan, and then I've got Lorraine and then Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with everything that Councillor Luff has said. Whilst I recognise the many of the positive aspects of this and drawing people to the area and what have you, I've been sat on there, I think, probably longer than anyone else on this committee. And I've seen us contort ourselves from time to time when we want to do or not do something, and this is up there with that. If you imagine we were trying to refuse an application and contorted ourselves around these policies to create a refusal reason, we would be slaughtered once it came to appeal. But there we go. The dance school, I understand the attractiveness of that. We are, with this, tacked onto the dance school, you've got this cafe. We are going to be granting permission to have a cafe there. Doesn't matter what the application says it's going to be used for. We're granting permission to have a cafe located there. And as Councillor Luff, I think, said earlier on, if that was what the application was, would we approve it? Because that's what we're about to do. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Lorraine?
Thank you. We haven't made anything up. It's all in here. Yes, it is. Otherwise, how would we have worded it and found it? Dursley, by the way, is decidedly rural, and as regards the cafe, there's a burger van in the lay-by.
Mark?
I'm all for the rules-based system and the authority that council has given us, but I think the very fact that we have DCC in a lot of cases is because we have to weigh up many different things, and of course we need to put that clearly across in terms of policy. And I agree in this case, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, for me this is one of those hard decisions, balancing everything that this scheme offers and just saying yes, we need this in Stroud District. As a district council, as a planning authority, we shouldn't be blocking this sort of development on a site that has just been left unused and derelict for so many years. We've got a way forward, and sometimes I think we do need to take a leap, and that's what DCC is for, is because sometimes our rules and our policies do need an exception, and how we make the case for that. I think that's why we have a committee for DCC to be able to make that case. And for me, I think that's entirely acceptable that we have to make those decisions and we have the delegated authority to do it. And this is a hard decision. So I'm comfortable with how we've approached this. Thank you.
Anybody else for debate? Yes, Gary.
Sorry, I just read that, and it's obviously not essential for sustainable farming, right? That's easy. Everyone's agreed with that. It's essential to be located there to promote enjoyment of the countryside, they're going to be indoors, right, and support the rural economy through employment, sport, leisure. Possibly, but it really is hard. Rural exception is sustainable, affordable, identified local need. I don't, maybe we've done it today, but it's not been a long-standing need that we need a dance studio, but it might be, and it could be done somewhere else. Enabling development required to maintain a heritage asset. Not much of a heritage asset there. The replacement dwelling clearly isn't that, and it will involve essential community facilities. Maybe, but they could be somewhere. They could certainly be done somewhere else if they're that essential.
Okay, Helen, but I would say we've been over all this with the first motion.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that when the local plan was written, no one could have anticipated writing policies to cover the guidance for this kind of proposal. Okay? Our job is not to rigidly stick by policies that were written some years ago to try and be generic and cover a multitude of scenarios. Our job is to weigh up the pros and the cons for a particular application and to look at the policies in that regard. And I feel like overall, the balance is clear in my mind in this particular proposal. I admit we've had to do some manoeuvring around the policies, but that's because they are generic policies. That's how it is. That's our job, and we've done it.
Yes, Martin and Lucas, then I think we probably should be trying to head for a vote.
Sorry, very briefly. So we're ignoring policy. It plainly does not comply with either EI 11 or CP 15, and I'm not clear whether we have the constitutional authority to do that, but it's what we're doing.
Yes, Lucas.
This is the development game. We could have put our Ubico depot on Stonehouse Industrial Estate, but we saw a cheap opportunity to get it somewhere better and put it there in the middle of the countryside, or maintained a depot in the countryside. Here's also a person who puts all sorts of things into a single application to make the value of the site as high as possible. I am indeed concerned about this cafe attachment. I wish that could be taken out, but here we are.
Okay, I'm going to take it to the vote now. I think we've been over the issues as much as we need to be. We all, I think, know how we're going to vote. So is everybody clear on what you're voting for? You're voting to permit, well, not to permit, you're voting to delegate the permission to officers subject to all the issues that we've talked about, the ecology and the conditions. We've already mentioned them on camera, so I think they're on record. Is everybody happy with that? You're voting to, let's just get the exact wording, but as I see it, you're voting to delegate permission, the authority to permit to officers, yep, subject to everything that we said around ecology and conditions, okay? So if you agree with that, it's 1 to agree, 2 no, 3 to abstain. So 1 is to effectively permit delegated to officers, okay? And 2 is no. Okay, so that is passed and that will proceed as described. Okay. Effectively permitting because the ecology can be sorted out. Okay, just to be clear. So I think we need to have a comfort break now. We've been going for a while, and we need to change the officers around for the final application. So, should we say 5 minutes? 11 Hunger Hill, Dursley, new dwelling and parking, including demolition of existing garage and associated works. Case officer is Mikola Druzhakin, who is here and will be introducing his report. Okay, Mikola?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So we have an item in Hunger Hill, Dursley. I will jump straight to the location plan. Those of you who've been on a site visit last week, closer, yes. How's this? Is it better? Right. So on the first slide, the arrow points to the site. This is this mostly rectangular site here with the house dwelling here. And on the right, you can see the footprint of the proposed dwelling. The next slide is existing and proposed front elevation. So looking from Hunger Hill towards the house dwelling and towards the site. So the bottom slide is the proposed. Next slide, again, existing and proposed rear elevation. So looking down from within the garden towards the house and the proposed dwelling on the bottom here. Next slide is the east elevation, the top existing, the bottom is proposed. So you can, from this one, you can see clearly the proposed dwelling will be set back from the existing building line. And the existing proposed west elevation and outlines of the neighboring properties as well. Next slides, a few slides with photos. So the top one is looking towards the front elevation, but it is a panorama, so slightly distorted, mind that. And the bottom one is looking from essentially where near the car, opposite Hunger Hill. This is from the about middle of the garden, looking up towards the house dwelling here on the right. And this is the hedge which will be removed. So the building to the left is the closest to the proposed dwelling on this side of Hunger Hill, and these are the buildings opposite. And the last photo is also from within the garden, but looking down at the properties at the bottom. Thank you.
Okay, public speaking. I've got no ward members, so I have John Rubin from Dursley Town Council. You'll have 4 minutes and there'll be a timer up on the screen. If you can keep an eye on that, I will have to cut you off if you go over. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. Dursley Town Council's objections to the application is based on poor and non-compliance of Dursley neighbourhood plans, policies D1, H1 and notably Stroud's local plan policies CP8, HC1, items 1, 4, 5 and 9. Also noted are the considerable number of objections raised by local residents. The application is considered overbearing planning, a term used to describe the impact a development will have on its surroundings, particularly neighbouring properties in terms of scale, intrusion, massing and dominating effect. With regard to the development control report, there is poor or no reference to Stroud's local plan policies CP5. The need for a construction environmental management plan has not been addressed. CP14, items 3, 5, 7 and 9. The latter of 2 were subjectively discounted. ES3, items 1 and 5, again, both subjectively discounted. ES7, the design of the rear of the proposed building doesn't achieve this policy. ES10, items 3 and 4, both of which are subjectively discounted, and ES12, which is not clear that a site appraisal has been done. As for design and appearance, the height of the proposed building reaches the height of the chimney pots of number 11 and nearly the ridge of numbers 7 to 9 Hunger Hill. Although set back from the lane, this has an impact on the setting as viewed from houses opposite and the rear of those in Harold's Close. There is also concern regarding access to the proposed build, with the front door shown below the line of the lane, with no indication how this will be achieved safely for pedestrians and vehicular traffic. The vernacular that the housing along Hunger Hill is mixed is not a fair generalisation. Houses at the west end of Hunger Hill are relatively modern, but those at the east end are the traditional and original cottages. The rear elevation full height windows in Harold Close, facing Harold Close, are not in keeping with the neighbouring architecture and are highly visible from houses. Its design would be detrimental to the scene of the immediate area. See policy CP14. As for residential amenity, the rear windows will not minimise overlooking and privacy of neighbours, particularly in Harold's Close. The height of the front will decrease light available to numbers 6 and 8 and 7 and 9 with reference to the Right of Light Act 1959. Generally, any property having uninterrupted enjoyment of light for more than 20 years acquires a right to light. Further, loss of vista is an integral part of Hunger Hill and Harold's Close and the setting of its character. See ES 10. Note the applicant considers the vista very important given the design of the rear windows, but at the expense of neighbours. As for the Highway Authority's statement, there would not be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or a severe impact on congestion. This requires an explanation given the discounting of the prior refusal of development, given that the vehicular ownership is significantly increased. Furthermore, the statement, given the scale of development, a construction traffic management plan is not considered necessary, does not reflect on-site inspection by the authority, CES 12. Construction will cause significant obstruction and potential damage given the width of the lane and absence of paving. Building deliveries will entail all materials unloaded onto the current parking area. There is nowhere for parking or turning of building vehicles, construction traffic, heavy plant or deliveries in this single track, steep and narrow lane, CES 12, CP5. The associated conditions...
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to sum up.
I've got about 3 sentences. The associated conditions also do not reflect a site visit. There is no paving or scope for such along Hunger Hill, and the requirement for cycle storage is simply inane, CCP5. Regarding danger of subsidence to some properties as not being a material planning consideration is fantastic. This is the purpose of the SEMP, CCP5. And finally, regarding negative impact on the sewer system as not being a material planning consideration is also fantastic. Has there been an assessment of existing facilities and their current performance? CCP 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And now speaking in opposition, Nigel Meredith. Again, you'll have 4 minutes. You can keep an eye on the clock on the screen, and I'll have to cut you off if you go over. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? I've got a croaky voice. Can you hear me? Fine. My name's Nigel Meredith. I live at 8 Hunger Hill, directly opposite to the site of the new house. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the meeting about this application. As of today, 27 objections have been made, including most of Hunger Hill. I can't possibly cover all the points in 4 minutes, but I'd like to emphasise the main reasons we believe this application should be refused. Firstly, on safety. Hunger Hill is a very narrow, steep hill with very poor street lighting. The road's only 9 feet or 2.7 metres wide by our house. Highways say there are no concerns with this application, but the narrowness of the hill has informed significantly planning decisions for recent new properties. These have called for wide roadening and an insertion of a footpath, neither of which have been undertaken to date. I do not accept that according to the DCC report, the previous refusals for planning are 30 years out of date. Cars and lorries are surely bigger now and the road isn't any wider. Any additional dwelling would make this already dangerous situation worse, with more car use on a road with restricted width, no passing place and no footpath. Secondly, and most importantly, is the detrimental effect on our living conditions. The DCC report actually acknowledges that the proposed development would limit some light to our properties, but states that our living conditions wouldn't be affected to a material degree. I'd assert that whilst this is from an officer experienced in planning issues, it is only an opinion, and we won't know the true effect until the building is completed. Above all, there is no mention of any proper daylight and sunlight assessments having been carried out as part of the application. And therefore, we can only go on the submitted drawings that you've seen on the screen a minute ago, which shows that they would indeed, the height of the new structure would indeed overshadow the dwellings opposite. Our cottages are dependent on the natural light coming in from the north-facing windows facing the proposed house. The cottages were built into the hill. The final point I'd like to emphasise is the overall effect any construction would have on the neighbouring cottages, which were built, many without foundations, pre-1850. Residents are worried, as can be seen by the most recent public comment, that as well as the impact of the heavy machinery on the lane and the properties, the closeness of the construction site to number 79 would cause or could cause structural damage. All in all, the residents of Hunger Hill and many more local people, as the committee can see from the objections made, including walkers who frequent that part of the hill, we would ask that this application is refused. I know councillors will not want to vote against an officer's recommendation, but if it's passed, we believe it'll impact on public safety and affect the living conditions of local residents. So I urge the committee to refuse permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions from members? Sorry, Lorraine. So if you speak as a ward member, though, in public speaking, then you can't take part in debate and deliberation.
Sorry,
so
say that again.
if you speak as a ward member in public speaking, then you won't be able to take part in debate and vote. So, yeah, okay, fine. Right, any questions for officers? Lorraine and then Jenny.
When we went on the site visit, I'm sure most of us noted the condition of the lane, or not. It's not in very good condition. There's a lot of construction traffic being up and down there. Is there anything that can be done with improving the lane due to the fact that there's going to be more construction traffic? Obviously, it'll have to be done afterwards if it was to be built. It's not going to improve. Will that be taken into consideration? Will there be any ideas of putting that right?
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, Nicola, just before you answer that, I can see that a member of the public is trying to ask a question, but I'm afraid our rules are that we can only take questions and... Sorry? Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Yes, you're the agent. Sorry, I skipped over that. I'm terribly, terribly sorry about that. Okay, we can hold on, Nicola, with that answer to the question. So, yes, we've got the agent speaking for the applicant. Apologies for that. I thought you were asking a question. You'll have 4 minutes and it'll be up on the screen, and I'll have to warn you if you go over. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm here to support the design for the new proposed dwelling at next to 11 Hunger Hill. The aim being really is to create a sustainable, affordable dwelling, which is actually sympathetic to the surrounding area, particularly Hunger Hill and its existing built environment, but to meet the needs of modern living. So, as you well know, this site is not in a conservation area, it's not in the AONB, and it's not near a listed building. The site is located just outside the AONB to the south and is located within the settlement boundary of Dursley. The application seeks full planning permission for the demolition of the existing garage inn to provide the space to build a new dwelling to the side of 11 Hunger Hill, and will be constructed using natural stone to match Hunger Hill to the front elevation to remain in keeping, which we worked on with the design with officers through Stroud District Council. We believe that the property, our interpretation really is that it complies with all relevant planning policies. It will make use of modern methods of construction, which is reflected in the design, and this will help the design to improve actually on the current building regulations requirements for sustainable homes that use less energy. We've had positive pre-app from Stroud District Council. We've worked with officers during the application and addressed any concerns the council had with parking, and indeed Highways have confirmed that they have no issues with the parking or the proposal, subject to conditions which are set out. Hunger Hill, it's worth noting, is only accessible via vehicle from one side. It's not accessible from the northeast. It's no entry to vehicles. Local planning policies highlight that new dwellings should be in keeping, accessible and sustainable, which we believe the construction methods and the design is. It uses low carbon energy sources and is in keeping with its surroundings. The front elevation matches the stone buildings on Hunger Hill, and it provides appropriate area of amenity space. It's not an intrusion on the countryside, is of a similar scale and layout to the existing dwellings, and is not subject to other material planning constraints. It has a layout, access and parking which is appropriate for that site. The height, scale and form of the building is in keeping with the street scene. We have got some, there was some issues with overlooking, which has been addressed already, I believe, in the report that you've got. The dwellings at Harold's Close are actually in excess of 40 metres from the upper floor windows that look directly in that position, and is actually set back slightly to 11 Hunger Hill's kitchen window, which faces the same direction. So we've been quite considerate with that. The proposed form of the dwelling is considered in keeping, and we're using materials that are already in use. The scale and scope of the proposal is also in keeping. We've ensured that the eaves and ridge heights are acceptable and fit in with the existing street scene. To conclude, it's considered the development complies with all the relevant planning policies. It's in keeping with the local area, particularly the immediate dwellings near the site, with minimal negative impact as far as is possible, understandably, with constructing a new dwelling. No impact to any protected species, and biodiversity losses are considered low. There are no heritage assets in close proximity to the site. It's not in a conservation area, and the proposal doesn't harm its surroundings. The proposal contributes a small amount towards the need for local housing, and we've worked with the local planning officers with the pre-application advice, which has been reflected in the design proposal. It demonstrates sustainability with good transport links, but will be using moderate sustainable methods to increase thermal efficiency and provide a quality sustainable dwelling. So we would ask that you consider the approval of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies again that I skipped over your speaking slot. Wasn't intentional. Right, okay, so we go back to questions. Mikola?
Thank you. Right, Councillor, so regarding the highway, the Hunger Hill lane itself, it is not within the applicant's ownership, so we would obviously, we don't want anything to make it worse, but we can only condition certain parts, but whether it's condition, I don't know what you have in mind specifically by making it better after the construction has finished, because obviously we cannot anticipate to what extent it will be made worse. So potentially there is a scope for condition to be included, but I think it depends specifically on the wording of that condition and what would be the trigger for that condition. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Jenny. Oh, sorry, I had Gary. Okay, Jenny, then Gary.
Can I ask what weight we should give the Dursley development plan?
Thank you, Councillor. We do give it weight. We consider it essentially as not as the local plan, but it is a supplement to the local plan. So whatever policies have been adopted within the NDP are considered as well.
Yes, Gary.
It's about two of the conditions, really. Given the difficulties of this site in terms of parking and the like, are we able to, I know we say it can't be occupied until the parking spaces are done. Are we able to make sure that the parking spaces at the side of the house are done first before the rest of the construction is done? That's the first condition, whether we can do anything about that. And second, it's a pretty steep hill. And to be realistic, if we're going to ask for a cycle store, we ought to ask for a cycle store that is actually take a bike that people can cycle up there. And there may be some people, but most people are going to need electric assistance. So is there any way that we can say that that should be have some electricity supply in that cycle store, because otherwise it won't be used, because the vast majority of people, probably including myself, wouldn't get up that hill without electric assistance.
Thank you, Councillor. Regarding the first question, the condition covers parking overall, so I don't think it would be to the detriment to make a different condition to adjust the wording so the parking can be provided for the host dwelling. So if the work starts, then they will have somewhere to park. Regarding the second question, I don't think it would be within our scope of what we consider to condition the electricity supply to the shed. Whether it's something that potential occupiers will choose to do themselves is up to them, but I don't think that's within the scope of the condition. Thank you.
Hayden, and then Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. The first one concerns light. I note your paragraph where it concludes by saying living conditions would not be affected to a material degree. I am aware that there are very specific measurements and angles and all that sort of thing. I can't remember them all myself. Can you confirm that it does actually, you've tested that and it actually complies?
Thank you, Councillor. So I will show one of the slides. This is looking towards the proposed rear elevation, and this is the properties opposite. So, and I will now jump back to the location plan. So these are the properties that will be opposite the new dwelling. So the new dwelling, as we can see from here, or actually from here, will be set back below the level of the existing houses. So whilst obviously it will be noticeable and there will be light, the light that will be reaching the existing property will be slightly reduced, the distance, as we can see on the location plan, between the two is sufficient enough for that light that will still reach the property to be, we consider it as being acceptable. And it is also worth noting that it is a north facing, so the most light that will be coming towards those properties, the sun will be, as it always does, moving this way. So from our perspective, we think that given the distance between the proposed house and the existing properties and the difference in levels, there will be no detrimental effect on light reaching the properties. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Does it to go back on the light? Does it comply with whatever I am aware they exist, very specific angles and all that sort of thing with regard to light? I can't remember what they are. Does it comply with that? I mean, your statement seems to suggest it does, but I just want to test that the maths has been done and it complies.
To answer your question, Councillor, we haven't done the technical assessment. What's set out in the report is the planning judgment based on the facts before us, but not the technical assessment itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hayden, could Griff just jump in quickly? Maybe help with a clarification, perhaps?
Sorry, just very quickly, you are talking, I believe, about a prescribed set, or well, there's either a set of planning guidance which we can use to assess the likelihood impact on development. That's the things like the 45-degree rule, the 25-degree rule. The other thing just to note is the prescribed right to light, which is under some some really old planning act, not planning act, really old act. So just to clarify, the right to light under the prescribed rights, it would be established through a civil law, and then it would become a material planning consideration, as opposed to the tests, the general guidance on amenity, which we can apply to planning applications. It's not part of our adopted policy, so it is only guidance. So there's just two different things going over there. There's policy guidance, which is the sort of the rules, and then there's the legal right to light, which is slightly separate.
Do you have a follow-up, Hayden?
I'm not sure if that's helped or hindered, to be perfectly honest, Griff, but I'll have a think about that for the time being. The other question I have, I've mentioned this before. We all have copies of our local plan, and we can refer to it easily. But there's neighbourhood development plans for many parishes in our district now, and we haven't got copies of those. I can see what the approximate description of D1 and H1 in the Dursley Neighbourhood Development Plan is, but I don't know the detail of it. We've just been through detail on the previous application on these policies. I asked if we could have them brought to us when neighbourhood development plans are appropriate. Is there any chance we could see the description of what D1 and H1 are? The detail of them? I did have a look on my phone, but it's difficult to see it, and I looked at home earlier.
Yes, we'll just get it up for you. Thank you.
Okay. Griff's going to investigate that. Victoria, I had you and then Lorraine. Victoria, do you want to see if Nicola can help you with another question in the meantime?
Yeah, thank you. I had a question over light, but that's been looked at, so thank you. I believe our highways expert has disappeared, but is it right in saying that the road that the proposal's on is a one-way street? Is there a one flow of traffic? And I know we visited the sites, but it wasn't clear which. So, what? Yeah, I want to clarify if I'm not sure which way it is and if it is a one-way street and if that's enforced.
Thank you, Councillor. As far as I know, yes, but I have witnessed otherwise when I was there, so I wouldn't be able to confirm 100%. Thank you.
Sorry, the officer's going to answer that. I'm afraid we can't take questions or answers from the public, I'm afraid. Yes, Griff.
From going to site, and you have to forgive me for the local names, but the east end, so that's the very steep bit, is access only, so you can't go through there unless you're accessing the properties on Hunger End Hill, and the eastern end, which is sort of the Union Street end, is a no entry.
Thank you. Also, this plan that you've got up on at the moment, the drawing to the right of the screen, that square box, that is the proposed of the new plan. The new dwelling is going to be there. It's not encroaching backwards, or is that's the new proposed?
That's the footprint of the proposed house.
That's the right word. Also, am I right in thinking that there currently is 3 car parking spaces at the site, plus a garage, and the new proposal is saying we're going to demolish the garage, and then there will be 4 car parking spaces total? Could you clarify for me? Thank you.
Yes, the garage will be demolished, and there will be 2 parking spaces for the new dwelling and 2 for the existing.
I think, yeah, I've got you down, Lorraine. I think they're getting ready to answer Hayden's question about the neighbourhood development plan, I think.
Councillor Jones, I've abandoned my laptop at the end of the desk, but there's policy D1 of the neighbourhood development plan. When you're ready, let me know and I will flick through to H1. Are members ready for me to move on to H1? Yeah, just give me a moment. And there's H1 for you now on the screen. Okay, are members happy now? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, Hayden.
Is it my turn again, Chair, or can I respond on this?
Respond to that. Well, yeah.
D1, when I just read it there, it mentioned that I think there are sensitivity areas where they think development should and should not take place. Obviously, I didn't see the map associated with that, so I don't know whether Hunger Hill is included as one of those areas that the neighbourhood development plan suggests is suitable for development. Sorry to raise more questions, but perhaps there's a map associated with it.
We'll get the map up for you.
Coming back.
Councillor, so as you can see, it is within the town landscape area. And sorry, we cannot zoom in with a better quality, but yes, so essentially it is on the edge, and that is also where it borders the AO and B as well. So, and to circle back to your original question, so that was part of the consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think T3, looking at that diagram, looking at a local person, I think T3, would that be right, Lorraine? That would be, it's within that, I think. T3?
Yes.
Yeah. So presumably T3 is one of the sensitivity areas where development is appropriate according to the neighbourhood development plan?
Yes, so, and also it is within the settlement boundary, so if there is an additional consideration as per the NDP, but overall it is appropriate as set out in the report, yes.
Yeah, okay, I accept that it's within the settlement boundary, but neighbourhood development plans, we do think they're very important. Local people have developed them and it's important we recognise those. So I just want to confirm that if it's in T3, T3 says that development, Dursley Town Council have said that is acceptable where they want development to take place. So I'd just like to confirm that, please.
Sorry, councillor, just 1 second.
The officers are working on it at the moment. Let's see what they come up with. We're not really supposed to have members of the public getting involved in the deliberations. Yeah, but let's hope, I think hopefully we're getting there.
Sorry to keep you on that this evening, members. The Neighbourhood Development Plan Policy D1 says that proposals should be assessed against the character areas. I think we would agree that falls into T3. It then says that you would apply that against the evidence base. Now, what I can't see in the Neighbourhood Development Plan at the moment on first looking is where that describes what that character of that area is. However, what I would say is that that's adding to our normal design assessment. So when officers go on site, we do look at the character of the area, the materials, the topography, what it generally looks like. So whilst the neighbourhood development plan is supplementing that in this instance, it wouldn't be a demarcation from CES12, which is our normal design policy. So the neighbourhood plans have to sit within the framework of the local plan. They get the same weight, but it's about adding extra information rather than moving away from that. So it's not the best answer, I'm afraid, but that's all I can manage at the moment.
I'm sorry to be a nuisance, Chair. Would it be possible to put D1 back up there? Because the bit that I read in there said something like the neighbourhood development plan has identified areas where the NDP accepts that development should take place. They would encourage it to take place, and some presumably that don't. I just want to try and understand what it said. I can't remember the exact wording. I did read it quite quickly.
Okay, let me know if you can't hear me because I've wiggled my way over to the side slightly. So this policy says, planning policy D1, character and design. New development and redevelopment within Dursley should reflect the positive characteristics of the place and must be locally distinctive. Within each of the Dursley landscape and town character areas identified, shown in figure 11, planning applications should respond to positive characteristics described in the local evidence. So I'm then going to move on to the explanation, which is on the white background. Dursley Town Council has undertaken character assessment work in the form of the Dursley Landscape Character Assessment 2015 and the Dursley Urban Design Framework 2007. The second paragraph, the Dursley Urban Design Framework 2007 established 8 character areas in the town centre, outlining the key traits and attributes of those areas and proposing areas for improvement in terms of development opportunities and public realm enhancements. So what we're really doing is we're doing here a bit of a picnic of policies. So we're taking our local plan design policy, which is ES12. We are then supplementing that with the neighbourhood plan D1, which we've got here. And then from there, we're being referred to the Dursley Urban Design Framework, which will set out the character traits of those areas. So...
Can we just do the third paragraph? Sorry to be a pain, because that's the bit that I...
Yes, so it refers to the town centre, which is, this site is outside of it.
Sorry, could you go back to the one we just had? I haven't analysed these words in detail. We've only had them, but it says, sorry, Chair, with your permission, the Dursley Landscape Character Assessment 2015 includes both a settlement characterisation and a more in-depth landscape character assessment. It follows a landscape sensitivity approach, highlighting areas unlikely to be suitable for development and describing the landscape characteristics of each area. It adds additional detail to the broad landscape characterisation undertaken by Stroud District Council. So I just want to understand this bit. It follows a landscape sensitivity approach, highlighting areas unlikely to be suitable for development. Those were the words that struck me. Sorry.
Okay, fine. So, again, we're looking at that, the way that the plans fit together. So, the local plan defines our settlement boundaries, and we promote development within settlement boundaries. And we have a landscape character assessment that says, you know, these are the landscape characters and this is the type of development that's in that. What we have in this instance is we have a development proposal for residential development, which is within the settlement boundary. So we would have a policy conflict if on one hand we're saying we promote development within the settlement boundaries, and on the other hand we are saying actually within this element of the settlement boundary, we've got a landscape objection. If we've got a landscape objection, that site shouldn't be within the settlement boundary. So I now understand your route of questioning, and I think my answer to you is, without going into the detail of all these documents, and I'd suggest that we probably don't need to, if we focus on CP3, which sets our settlement hierarchy, that would establish that, along with the proposals maps, that this is within the settlement boundary. And taking then on board the fact that we have development on all sides of the site. You know, we've got the cottages opposite on the, gosh, this is when for a planner I get all my directions wrong, on the southern side of Hunger Hill. And then we've got properties east and west. And then further down the hill in Harold's Close, we've also got development. So this site is not isolated in terms of landscape. From far viewpoints, it would read as part of the existing settlement.
Thank you, Griff. Just to conclude, I accept and I understand that NDPs have to be developed alongside the local plan and their pro-development and all that sort of stuff. It's just that this perhaps goes more widely, that if they've identified areas where development would not be appropriate, that there could be a dichotomy between our policy that it says if it's inside the settlement boundary, development's good, but within those words, it seemed to imply that there could be areas where the NDP suggests, no, it wouldn't. I'm not going to pursue it any further, but thank you.
Yes, Lorraine, you had a question.
I've got more than one now. Regarding the light, can we bring the elevations back up, please? Can you bring up the one where there's another one that shows the houses at the back, sort of face on? Well, that'll do. Are the officers aware that the light coming in this direction from in front of the application, the light coming from that direction is practically all that the houses behind it get? They don't get light from behind because of the woods. That's the first question. The second question is to do with the settlement boundary that you've all just been talking about, etc., and the Dursley local plan, the neighbourhood plan. How is it then that, completely contrary to what the town council says about certain planning applications, any planning applications, the district council can refuse or permit in contradiction to what the town council wants? they're all within the settlement boundary. So how is this any different?
Thank you, Councillor. So regarding the first question, about the light, so I'm assuming you meant the green area where the woods are. Yes. So as we can see on this plan to the left, there is a substantial distance between the rear elevation of these houses and the actual wooded area, which is going to be approximately in about 40 meters or so. I understand that the woods are substantial, but this is enough of a distance for appropriate amount of light to reach the property. Because if we were to say, if, for example, there were no woods there, but somebody was building a large house, we are very unlikely to have said that it will be blocking the light to these properties due to the distance between them. Should I go ahead and answer your second question? Is that all right?
I'll just come back on that one. People who live along the woods, they all have the same sort of problem with light and growing things or not growing things due to the lack of light. It's not just the lack of light, it's how short a time it's there.
Councillor, if we, as it was pointed out before, we didn't do the technical assessment, it was the planning judgment. So I think if there was a need for more information regarding what you brought up, then it would have to be deferred, I think, for further investigation. Thank you. And can I please ask you to repeat your second question? So I'm assuming what you're referring about this. Sorry. With your second question, when you were referring to the settlement boundary, did you mean that the policy, the NDP policy we brought up, how it contradicts with the district council policy? Is that what we're referring to?
How it often contradicts with the district council decisions.
Thank you. So, a neighbourhood development plan will go through an examination, and to be found sound, it cannot conflict with the local plan, which is set by the district council. What we might have here is a difference of planning opinion, and all of us in this room, officers, members, you can come to subjective views on planning, and the officer's role is to find a balanced judgment into that, taking into account the considerations of the district as a whole in our local plan and those expressed by the town or parish council in their neighbourhood plan. So I can't say that there's necessarily a conflict in the planning policy, but the planning system allows for officers and indeed members of this committee to interpret those policies in different ways.
Okay, did you have another question? No? Okay. I've got Martin Brown and then Lucas. Did I miss anybody out? Victoria, and you don't. Okay, then Martin and then Lucas.
Well, I was going to follow up something Hayden said, but it's not really a question at this point. So I wanted to say I think it's very important what Hayden's emphasising about our paying attention to NDPs. And just to, I think, clarify what Griff was saying, that the landscape, the point in policy D1 that the landscape character assessment of 2015, which highlights areas unlikely to be suitable for development, that because of the points just made about non-conflict with the district council, that cannot include areas that are within the settlement boundary. Right, Griff?
I don't have the documents in front of me to give you the strength of an answer that I would like, but on the fact that one plan can't conflict with the other, theoretically and logically, my answer has to be yes. But without the document in front of me to precisely say what falls in what zone, I'm afraid I have to put a little bit of a disclaimer on it.
Yeah, Lucas.
Well, policy D1 and H1 are mentioned by the Dursley Town Council as not favouring this development. And for me, it is possible that overall development within a development boundary is perfectly all right, given certain conditions, etc. But maybe the town council, but I haven't got the map or the detailed wording of those 8 areas for me either, feel that in particular areas, development is not very desirable. That doesn't contradict necessarily the overall the designation by the district council. And I feel the town council has made quite a strong, it says it itself, strongly objects to the proposed development. So my question is, how can D1 and H1 be referred to so strongly by the Dursley Town Council, and you're saying that it can't be in conflict with the overall?
This is a question of policy interpretation and weight to policies. So the officers will have made a recommendation, taking into account the suite of development management policies, which include policies in the neighbourhood plan. Now, members may put a different weight on different policies. So what we're talking about here is weight applied to policies and putting that into the planning balance, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Thank you, Kev.
Any more questions? If not, would somebody like to propose? Oh, sorry, Lorraine, did you have a question? Okay. Anybody wish to propose officer advice which is to permit? Gary? Sorry.
I did want to propose permitting, but I asked the question earlier about whether we could have those 2 spaces at the start as a condition. Is that okay to do that in a proposal, or do I need to?
You can do that as part of your motion.
Yeah.
We need to have a seconder for that. Yeah, could we just clarify exactly what it is that you're proposing then?
So there's 2 sets of car parking spaces. There's the one where in front of the property, and there's the one for the original property at the side, which at the moment isn't a car parking space. There's a gate there, and it's not deep enough, and they're going to put 2 spaces there. I think those should be developed first.
I think that's conditioned. Isn't that conditioned? Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Councillor. So, condition 4, which is on page 50 of your papers, currently reads, the development hereby permitted shall not be occupied until the vehicular parking facilities for the existing and proposed dwelling have been provided in accordance with the plan, and these facilities maintained thereafter.
Yeah.
So you have a choice to amend that condition. You could insert a condition that says prior to, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, but it'd be something along the lines of prior to commencing the development of the house, the parking spaces for the existing one will be, and then you'd have a separate condition that says prior to the occupation of the new dwelling. So it's within your gift to think about the wording of those conditions to secure what you're trying to promote there.
And I would be happy to delegate that wording. The meaning's quite clear, because otherwise, they just won't get used. But I'd be happy to delegate that, and otherwise I'm proposers otherwise written.
So you're proposing that those parking spaces on the side are done before anything else to help out with construction traffic and that kind of thing? Yeah, okay. So I think officers have a... No, yes, Mark.
I'm just thinking in terms of the heavy equipment that will be going to site. Would it be possible to word that in terms of groundworks before groundworks commence on the dwelling? Because that's where a lot of the heavy stuff is going to be, and a lot of the disruption potentially for the lane. So, just an idea.
I think we got two slight different issues there. I believe Councillor Luff's point is about ensuring the parking provision is made for the existing dwelling effectively before their current parking is removed from by construction traffic. I think, Councillor Ryder, you might be talking slightly differently about construction traffic itself, which is not currently covered by condition.
Yes, I see the error of my ways. What I was looking, I think they're both valid points. To be honest, I'm looking in a lot of the objections that I saw in the papers. It was concerns from the residents with regards to where are the vans going to go, where are the contractors going to go. So that's the point I was trying to address, rather than just the residential facility. So I don't know if we can achieve control of both, but it was the construction vans that I was concerned about.
Yes, I understand your concern. You will have noted from your site inspection or your own visit to the sites that the nature of the site is constrained. Now, members could apply a construction traffic management plan to seek to minimise the impacts of construction traffic, but in doing so, you'd have to bear in mind that our ability to manage all of that traffic on site may well be limited due to the nature of the site itself, and that the planning system can't necessarily control parking in the public highway. But if you think that's important, then, you know, it's between you lot to work out what your motion is and what additional conditions you may or may not want to impose.
Yes, completely understand. I think it was just a case of if there was the opportunity there for off-road parking at the start of the scheme for the construction vehicles, that's hopefully they would use it. I realise we can't control it, but hopefully if there was that option there, it would reduce the impact on the lane in terms of vehicles addressing the site.
Yes, Lorraine, did you have a contribution?
Yes, thank you. Can you explain to me, sorry, page 50, paragraph 5. Can you explain to me how you're going to enforce this when we have abjectly failed to enforce it at Harold's Close, where people have been subjected to Sunday construction for many occasions, from which I have called enforcement and asked to have it sorted out, and it's never been sorted out. So how are we going to enforce this?
Sorry, Lorraine, but that's an enforcement matter. I mean, we're sitting as DCC. We can't really be trying to sort out enforcement. We can try to avoid having enforcement problems, but existing ones. So.
This is the reality.
Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, essentially, we would be reliant on the evidence base. If there was, like you pointed out, Sunday work, for example, we would need evidence of that happening and then the enforcement could follow that procedure and, if necessary, investigate.
There was evidence. And there was also evidence of slippage as well.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. I know where you're coming from, but this isn't really relevant to this particular application. Yes, Griff, did you want to come in?
Just to clarify where we are at the moment, Councillor Luff is proposing a motion, which is officer recommendation subject to some condition tweaks. That's sort of on the table. Councillor Ryder is suggesting some other tweaks. I don't know, Councillor Patrick, if you were wanting to get into this debate about potential conditions or whether this was a comment about the effectiveness of that condition. We can have a debate about that between ourselves outside of committee, but I think we need to focus on getting this motion defined so that we can move on to getting a seconder and then ultimately a vote.
Yes, Helen.
It seems that the aim of these tweaking recommendations is, first of all, to make sure that the current parking spaces are replaced before the potential busyness of construction traffic is involved. Yeah? So can we word something to that effect to achieve that. So to get those new parking places constructed before the garage gets taken down and the rest of the work starts. Is that, yeah? Everyone seems on the same line, and it seems a really good idea. So I'd be willing to support that. It seems like we're all there.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So essentially, before any works would commence, we would need evidence that the 2 parking spaces Councillor Love pointed out to the side of the existing house would be provided, and only then would the work commence.
Okay, so I think we're clear now that sorry, Griff.
So the motion that I think Councillor Luff is putting forwards is been nicely summarised by Councillor Fenton. But the wording of that would then be delegated to Mick to prepare and then signed off by officers. So I think, Chair, we're now looking for a seconder for that motion. If Councillor Luff can confirm he's happy with that.
Okay, Helen, you're seconding. Right. Okay. So we can move into debate. Anybody wish to start? Well, I should ask the seconder if you want to kick off.
Maybe later.
Okay. Anybody else want to? Lucas?
I feel this should be deferred because we haven't had the technical information about the light. We haven't got the details of the local plan.
Sorry to interrupt, Lucas, but it's getting late, and we have actually got a motion on the table, and it has to be debated now. So we can't defer.
No?
We have to vote on this.
Yeah. So.
Carry on with the second suggested
So.
Okay.
And I feel therefore I'm not in full possession of the facts and the possible consequences, and therefore unable to vote on this.
Okay. No, my point was simply that we can't take a vote to defer until we've decided whether or not we want to do something else that we've already got on the table. Yes, Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. I think the question over light is probably moot. It's not that there's already existing dwellings there. There's already the trees and the hills there. The existing light issue, I don't think it's relevant to what we're talking about right now. I think, yes, there's a privacy issue with light going in and things like that, but that's been addressed. It's over 40 metres. We went to site, we saw the distance. The construction piece, which I can hear mutterings in the back corner, and I know they're very animated about it. When we went to visit the site, there was construction going on both east and west sides of the road. There's already a feasible element for construction to deliver materials to site safely and to enhance the dwelling and build a dwelling. So I'm in two minds and still don't really know how I'm going to go because it's questionable. It's always difficult to decide. But actually, there's a lot already here that we can kind of pursue, and it's a really sympathetic design, what they've done with the levelling and everything else. It's an upside-down living house. I think they've done everything they can to make it work within the area that they have. That was my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for debate? Yes, Martin.
Yeah, I can understand the local neighbours objecting to another house being put in their street. Perhaps I would. But it seems to me the kind of site, an infill within a town, providing housing, in easy reach of the town centre. It's a sustainable site in that respect. And it's in general the sort of housing site that we ought to be supporting on general grounds of where new housing should be, rather than, say, out in the countryside. I think, though I'm not quite sure yet, that I support the proposal.
Yes, Lorraine.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm confused. I don't recall us going round the back of those other houses. The ones against the woods. On the site visit. I'm sure we didn't go around the back of there. Anyway, the construction that was ongoing at the time is at the bottom of that very steep hill with access from the other road. It's not within that skinny little narrow lane. It's down at the bottom of the hill. It's a little bit different.
Okay, yes, Victoria.
I'll come back. There was development going down on the other side of the lane. There was a new bit, I believe it was a new build, and there was a lot of, but it's not down the bottom. It was one. So if you're looking at the new dwelling, the proposed dwelling, you look behind and go 2 houses down. It was the third house.
On the lane?
On the lane.
Yeah, but it's further down.
By less than 20 steps. So I don't think that that's probably relevant or fair given the proposal in front of us, if I'm honest. I understand what you're saying, but I think given it was there, we saw it from, we stood outside the proposed site, you could see there, we could see the proposed solar panels from the others on the other side. I think we're getting off topic of what we've already discussed. Sorry, Lorraine.
Helen? No? Anybody else for debate? No? No, go on.
I do have sympathy for the residents on Hunger Hill who, first of all, they don't want the disruption over months and months and months of another building project, particularly when they've already had some exactly where they are. We can debate. But I'm remembering that one thing that people have reminded us, perhaps even officers have reminded us in these committee meetings, is that there is no right to light, there is no right to a view. Is that correct? I'm looking to officers. Well, there is no legal right to a view. Now, if I lived in number 8 or 9 and my view was under threat, I would be upset about that. I absolutely would. And I do have a lot of sympathy for those residents. I hope that with the design that we're looking at the moment, there is still going to be some view, because the way it seemed to me was that the design was very carefully put so that the roof levels stepped up the hill gradually. So we don't see the roof of a new property at the height of numbers, was it 13? 13, 11? No, 11's the one that's there. The one, if we look up the hill, I don't know, we're not at that height, we're something in between, which seemed appropriate to me in terms of like the roof levels. Yeah, I think this is a difficult one, but I think overall I can see that this plan has lots of merit, so I'm moving towards supporting it. Thank you. Sorry that was garbled.
Gary, do you want to sum up as the proposer if nobody else has got anything?
It's not perfect. It affects other people. The construction is difficult, but we have a sustainably built, designed house in a very sustainable location, and we have a presumption in favour of sustainable development. This is sustainable development.
Okay, if we're done with debate, I think we can go to the vote then. So just to be clear, the motion is to permit, as per officer advice, with the condition that the parking spaces on the side of the existing dwelling are completed before any other construction work or groundworks, any works basically. Yep. Okay. Okay, so everybody's clear on that. That's 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 to abstain. Okay, so that is permitted, subject to the condition agreed. Okay, we've got one more item in your pack, which is...
Hopefully councillors will see the photograph I gave you. That is going to take our light. It's not a visitor, it's right to light.
Okay, thank you for attending. Good night. Get home safe. Right. Yes, the final item is the budget item. Do we actually have to vote on this, Griff? Okay, fine. Well, it's not actually in our final decision, is it? It goes to... Yeah, okay. Right. Okay, fine. Okay, does anybody want to have any actual discussion on this? I assume you've read it and digested? Yes. That's great. Okay. Yeah, well, this is the decision. I just wanted to see if anybody actually wanted to have any discussion before we... The recommendation anyway is that... I'll put my glasses on, that might help. Okay, committee recommend... Okay, so yes, we're voting to recommend the Strategy and Resources. Yeah, we don't make the final decision. So committee recommends to Strategy and Resources that the revised Development Control Committee revenue budget for 2023-24 and the original 2024-25 revenue budget are approved by S&R. Fees and charges listed as shown at Appendix A is approved. Do you have a proposer for that? Gary, seconder Helen. I'm assuming, especially given the late hour, that we don't want to have a debate on this. It's the budget. It's not really our final decision. It's up to S&R and Council, presumably, eventually. Okay, so are we just doing this with a show of hands, or are we doing it? Yeah, okay. So all those in favour? Okay, that's agreed. Okay, thanks.